the southeast this afternoon. To the north and west of that, it will become a little bit drier across parts of Northern Ireland. Some sunshine just to end the day, but it will be a slightly fresher end to the day here. Now, the rain continues to sink south and eastwards through this evening, and that means skies become clearer for more northern areas. Still a risk of a few snow showers here and there, just across the Highlands in particular. More eastern areas of Scotland seeing a chilly end to the day, but plenty of clear skies. Northern Ireland as well, plenty of clear skies. There's a risk of ice as we head into this evening on any wet surfaces, particularly across the north. For more central areas, a lot of cloud around this evening. Outbreaks of rain, though the heaviest rain does become more focused to the far south and east, and those clearer skies more widespread as the night goes on. So high pressure is moving in, a ridge of high pressure just for a time as we head towards Wednesday. Wednesday is looking like the best day of the week for dry and sunny weather, but it will be a chilly start. Widespread rural frost is expected on Wednesday. That's away from the very far south and east, so we've got that cloud and rain just clearing through Wednesday morning. So plenty of sunshine throughout the morning. Into the afternoon, more cloud will move into more northwestern areas as the next batch of rain arrives for Wednesday night. But plenty of sunshine lasting much of the day across more eastern areas. It will be a fairly chilly day, though, after the chilly start to the day. Temperatures around average.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Thank you, Britain, for helping us reach 10 million followers across social media. We are truly honoured to have your trust, one follower at a time.
Good morning, this is the latest AI travel news from GBNews.com. On the A69 westbound east of Corbridge, a crash near the A6085 is closing one lane, causing 10 minutes of delays. On the M62 westbound between Junction 22 and Junction 21, an incident is blocking one lane. In Lincolnshire, the A1 northbound between the A151 and the A607 has lane closures after a collision. On the M25 clockwise between Junction 24 and Junction 25, one lane is shut after a smash. And on the trains, East Midlands Railway has disruption between Stoke-on-Trent and Derby, while Great Western Railway is using road transport between Liskeard and Looe. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
Well, you're absolutely right. Spot on. I couldn't help feeling that perhaps it was actually just a joke, and they were going to come back in 2 years' time and say, we took you all in. It was, in fact, a joke. Now we're going to produce something more serious, because it's absolutely hilarious and ridiculous. Commercial suicide, I described it as.
Well, the individual behind it is no more. What would you like to see from the brand? Presumably not people with asymmetric haircuts in pink dresses with sledgehammers doing precisely zero to do with cars.
Well, again, absolutely, you're spot on. I mean, it's just totally unrelated to cars at all. It wasn't even a car in the advert. Jaguar was built on style, and that brought passion for cars. That's what made them different. I remember many years ago, a Jaguar executive in the States saying to me, people say, I like my Mercedes, but I love my Jaguar. It's all about passion. Style engendered that. That's what we've got to have. We need to see a proper, more traditional, stylish, real Jaguar that can build on the brand and the heritage of the past.
OK, Philip Porter, I'm going to put you on the spot now. If you're in charge of the next Jaguar advert, what would it look like?
As diametrically opposite and different as it possibly could be from what they produced. I suppose, I mean, I live a little in the past, I admit, although I also think I'm hopefully realistic about the current situation and everything, the present. But I'd like to see the heritage shown. Jaguar were not afraid to talk in the past about their heritage, the Le Mans wins back in the 50s, the E-Type in the 60s. This is what added excitement and luster to the brand.
GB News, the People's Channel.
All too often, people will be sitting at home watching a press conference live, and they'll hear loads of questions being asked, and they'll be thinking, that's not my question. That's not my concern.
We don't care whose feathers we ruffle. We ask the questions that you want answering.
You're all standing on the street protesting and wanted to have an open discussion.
My name is Patrick Christie's. I do a show for GB News in the UK. Is it possible to talk to you quickly?
Journalism in this country has been a cosy world full of groupthink until now.
Well, this is the best view ever of Whitehall, looking out across all the tractor drivers of England who've come together to make their point.
Hello, so as you can see, I'm here in Westminster as the protest begins.
Yes, I'm very much in the thick of it.
Look, we're challenging narratives here at GB News, and that's what sets us apart.
Good morning, it's 9:30 on Tuesday the 13th of January, live across the UK, Britain's Newsroom with Andrew Pearce and Miriam Cates.
Well, the Home Office's crackdowns on illegal migrants with what they're branding a record number of raids and arrests resulting in 50,000 deportations. But will their laughable new tactic to use TikTok as a deterrent really work?
Not as convinced that the story is as positive as is being spun, but the reality is if huge numbers more people are coming into the country illegally, there is going to be huge numbers more people working illegally in our economy. If you come to this country and break in, you should be removed.
And Britain is preparing to take the fight directly to Putin's war machine, with elite special forces poised to seize Russian oil tankers on the high seas.
And Donald Trump has ordered 25% tariffs on any country doing business with Iran as protests across the country continue to rage and the death toll inexorably rises.
Back at home, the Chancellor is being accused of gaslighting the country, claiming that pub bills are at record low, while landlords stare down soaring costs and wait nervously to see if the promised tax cuts will ever materialise.
Homeschooling is booming in England, but the watchdog Ofsted now warns too many parents are doing it out of desperation, not conviction, and many children are slipping through the cracks.
While the Scottish Government prepares to announce its budget today, the Prime Minister is urged to stay out of Hollywood until the May elections. Could be troublesome for Starmer.
And women are being sold comforting myths about fertility while the biological clock ticks on. New research shows just how little many are being told and how much they want to know about IVF.
This is a really interesting story, Andrew, about IVF, and it shows that most women, well, people in general, think that IVF is far more successful than it really is, and so they see it as an insurance policy if perhaps they don't start to have children by mid-30s and think, oh, well, it'll be fine, we can use IVF, but actually it's surprisingly ineffective over the age of 35 or 40.
And that's what this is. It's a major new report about that. So if you are delaying and delaying and delaying because you want to pursue your job, think IVF will sort everything, don't be so sure. As ever, we want to know what you think. Send your views, post your comments by visiting
gbnews.com/your-say. But first, here's your 60-second news update with Sam Francis.
Very good morning to you from the newsroom just after 9:30. Well, the top story, the Home Office has launched its biggest ever crackdown on illegal working, with more than 17,000 raids and 12,000 arrests in just 18 months. The Home Secretary says there's now nowhere for migrants to hide, but the Conservatives accuse Labour of letting illegal immigration boom.
Anybody caught working illegally should be deported, that the wages that they've managed to get out of that work should be taken from them and used to help remove them from the country.
Also this morning, Sir Keir Starmer has warned X to get control of its AI chatbot Grok or face government intervention. Ofcom is investigating claims it's being used to create sexualised images of women and children as ministers move to criminalise AI-generated abuse. Lord Peter Mandelson has apologised to Jeffrey Epstein's victims for staying friends with him after his conviction. He admits, I was wrong to believe him after losing his job as UK ambassador to Washington. The Liberal Democrats have pledged a legal right to be seen in A&E within 12 hours. They say more than 50,000 people waited that long in November alone, calling it the result of years of failure.
It is devastating for patients and their health outcomes, and it is so demoralising for our NHS staff as well. They hate providing care in corridors.
And the BBC is trying to have Donald Trump's $5 billion lawsuit thrown out before trial. It says a Florida court has no jurisdiction, and Trump was re-elected anyway. Those are the latest headlines. I'll have a full roundup for you at 10.
Tune into GB News Radio wherever you are. Online, on DAB digital radio, on TuneIn, on Radio Player, on Nation Player and on your smart speaker. Just say, play GB News.
Hello, good morning and welcome. You're watching and listening to Britain's Newsroom. We're live across the United Kingdom on GB News with Andrew Pearce and Miriam Cates.
So, would you teach your child at home?
Possibly.
Because Ofsted have done a major report and they're saying the number has surged, not least because since COVID, when people were taught from home via Zoom and email, a lot of parents discovered with horror the diet of what their kids were being taught and thought, right, I'm taking out of school. But there's no proper regulation, Miriam, of how many kids are being taught at home, what happens to them, and do parents who teach their children at home, do they teach them great stuff, good general knowledge, but do they prepare them to pass their exams at 16?
Well, I think the answer is it depends. And I know people who do homeschool do a phenomenal job. And there are, in big cities particularly, there are big networks of homeschooling parents. So lots of families get together to do PE or science teaching, and there is a social element. And I think often those parents do a very good job. But, on the other hand, there are people who take their children out of school for nefarious reasons, who don't teach them at home, whose children don't ever learn anything, and obviously that's terrible for them, terrible for society. But the question is, how do you crack down on this without actually infringing people's right to bring up their children as they want, which I think is a very important one?
Yeah, it's very. We're going to have a debate on this later, and I must say I'm very glad I wasn't taught at home. Much as I love my mother, she had much patience.
Yes, I think it strained family relationships in many households.
You've got children, but how would you have coped with teaching your kids?
I don't know. I mean, I did consider it at primary level
because...
Yes, that's true, actually. I probably have an advantage.
Yeah.
But I think one of the problems we've got in this country is that children start school far too young, particularly for boys. 4 is far too young to go to school, to be sitting down all day, to be in that kind of environment. Whereas in other countries like Scandinavia, for example, they wait till 6 and then they do a lot better because they start when they're ready to learn. So I did consider doing that for a couple of years. But yeah, I just think you've got to be prepared to be a full-time parent and teacher, and most families just can't manage that. But I think you should be allowed to if you want to.
Interesting. Well, let us know what you think, and so we will have a debate on that later in the programme. Now, Labour, in the form of the Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood, very ambitious Shabana Mahmood, it has to be said, claim that immigration enforcement raids, cracking down on illegal working, have hit the highest level in Britain ever as they ramp up their crackdown on migrant workers.
Well, critics claim that despite the encouraging number of crackdown raids, the illegal job economy is still thriving because of Labour's soft position on the borders.
And their latest brainwave, get this, they're going to use a TikTok account, TikTok, to show how they're stopping the influx of small boat crossings. I didn't know they were stopping influx of small boat crossings. News to me.
Indeed. Well, we're joined now by the former Conservative MP and Immigration Minister, Tom Pursglove. Tom, good morning. Welcome to the studio. Now, let's get on to the numbers of the crackdown in a minute. But the reason this is needed is because so many people came here illegally or stayed here illegally after their visa expired whilst the last Conservative government was in power.
So these numbers will consist of people who've overstayed visas, but also people who've arrived via small boats and perhaps absconded from Home Office accommodation and gone to work in the illegal economy. And it is right that ministers take a robust approach to this. It's right that officials work hard to identify these people and to remove them. But I think these figures that have been sort of triumphantly shared with us all today by government really are rather misleading in the sense that, yes, it's great that they're increasing the number of these illegal working raids, which builds on a lot of work that was being done in the back end of our time in government. And, of course, Labour MPs voted against the powers that helped to do this very work. But when you actually dig into the number of those people being deported at the end of the process, they are very small. So 12,300 arrests, but only 1,700 of those have been deported, which is a huge gulf of over 10,000.
And, Tom, there's no official figure for how many illegal workers are in Britain, but most estimates put it around 700,000 to 900,000. So 12,000 arrests they're not even scratching the surface.
No, this is tiny. And when you consider that on many of the worst crossing days, you see over 1,000 arrivals or in and around 1,000 arrivals.
Yeah.
It just shows you the scale of what you're dealing with. And all the while that government doesn't have a deterrent, all the while that we continue to have these problems with the ECHR where you can't deport people or you can't remove people who've got no right to be here, this is just going to continue. This is all downstream reaction. You've got to be dealing with this upstream and proactive in doing so.
But Miriam's point is right, isn't it? I mean, a lot of this watch happened on the Tory watch. The 700,000 to 900,000 illegal workers didn't happen in the last year. That's been happening over a number of years. And I know when Boris Johnson was Mayor of London, he wanted an amnesty for illegal migrants. And as Prime Minister, we know he presided over a massive surge in legal migration.
Well, I was always firmly against an amnesty. I thought it would send all the wrong signals about our intent around the border. If you come here illegally, or if you overstay a visa, if you come in a small boat, you overstay a visa, you should expect to be detained and removed. And we have to get back to a position where people are of the understanding, if they make these crossings, if they overstay their visa, that is precisely what will happen. And you're right to touch on that issue of legal migration numbers and visa numbers. And that's why in government, you know, I was tasked by Rishi Sunak, following on from Robert Jenrick, to get on and deliver that package of measures to bring numbers down. Now, there's a lot being said about that at the moment in terms of getting to a place where you could potentially have negative net migration. Now, a lot of that, at least in part, is due to the fact that the government is presiding over a disastrous situation with the economy and encouraging Brits to leave in droves. But we have brought visa numbers down.
A tiny fraction of the inward and outward flow of people. And I think we've got to come back to the fact that the reason we're in such an appalling mess is that post-Brexit, people of this country voted for Brexit because they wanted to control our borders. That was one of the key messages of the campaign. Conservatives promised to deliver Brexit. Immigration from the EU has certainly slowed considerably, but it has ballooned from countries outside Europe, countries where people are perhaps not as well educated, they're certainly not as able to integrate into our culture. And the Labour government is now facing an enormous mess, something very difficult to solve because of those failures of the previous government.
They fought every step of the way against all the measures that we took on illegal migration, but also on legal migration. Now, I would argue, and as someone who campaigned very vociferously to leave the EU, it's the right thing to do, not least to be able to help us to control our borders. You'd have no control over free movement if we were still in the EU. What we now have is the opportunity to pull the levers. Now, I would say that in government we did that too late. But the infrastructure, because of Brexit, is there to be able to do that. And what we're now seeing is, having pulled those levers, having been much tougher on social care visas, having been much tougher on dependents, having taken a more difficult and challenging line when it comes to work visas and those for students, you are seeing the numbers come down in the way that was intended when we were making the case in the referendum. We should have done it sooner, but I'm pleased that it is beginning to bring about a much more sustainable position when it comes to visa numbers. But I still think there'll be more to do, even if we get to a place where we're in that sort of negative net migration territory, as some predict.
Has Nigel Farage tried to woo you, a very prominent Tory Brexiteer, into his ranks, having just recruited Nadeem Zahawi?
Look, I've known Nigel for a very long time. In that referendum, we worked together.
I know you did.
We ran Grassroots out together, and it was a great success and helped to win the referendum. Look, I've always been a Conservative, and I can't imagine not being in the Conservative Party. I think Nigel is very respectful, actually, of the fact that people come from different traditions. Look, we get on very well,
So
but there's never been an approach. There has never been an approach in the way that you might be trying to suggest.
Are you disappointed with Zahawi?
Look, I like Nadeem a lot. I've got a lot of respect for him. I think he's a big player, and I think it is a major signing for reform. I hate seeing fellow Conservatives in different parties. And, you know, rather like Jacob Rees-Mogg has been so consistently saying on this channel and beyond, I also have been saying for many months now that we have to unite the right, because the worst possible situation, and I don't think the country will forgive us, by the way, if we allow a situation where the two parties squabble, and what that leads to is a left-wing government, either Keir Starmer and the Labour Party back in charge, or a terrible, terrible coalition of Labour, the Lib Dems, the SNP and the Greens. That would be unforgivable.
Of course, Zahawi, of course, also backed an amnesty for illegal migrants. I've asked on social media if that's still his view, because I don't think that's the view of reform.
I think that is most definitely not the view of reform, and it's certainly not where Conservative thinking on this issue sits. But public tolerance and the debate on this has changed enormously over recent years.
That is very true. Well, there you go. Tom Pursglow, former Immigration Minister, thank you very much. I think it's looking increasingly likely that the parties will have to unite. I mean, the polling shows Reform down, Conservatives up. They're getting closer So they may have to do that. Well, we'll see. Still ahead, the Chancellor is being accused of gaslighting the country, claiming that pub bills are at record lows, while landlords are staring down soaring costs. But up next...
Britain is preparing to take the fight directly to Putin's war machine. We'll tell you how. But first, if you're in search of that holiday sun, here's the forecast.
Can't wait to get in that sea.
Lovely and warm.
Just like the feeling of having great travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello. If you're heading away for some winter sun, there's plenty of sunny weather across the Mediterranean, into Spain and Portugal, some wet weather through the rest of this week, but plenty of sunshine for parts of the Mediterranean, particularly into Greece. A risk of showers for Italy, parts of Croatia as well through this week, but it's Spain and Portugal that's seeing the particularly wet weather through the rest of this week. Slightly fresher feel for the Canary Islands on Wednesday, but it does look like temperatures come up more closer to those 19-20 degrees by the weekend.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Do you trust what you're being told? Good, because neither do I.
Those are just facts.
I'm Alex Armstrong, and on my show, we'll expose the spin.
Well, I want to answer that, because you didn't let me last time, because you always speak over me.
The broken promises.
To deny that is denying the truth.
And the hypocrisy.
Needs to stop. You think we can allow?
Politics, policy, parliament. Nothing is off limits. No sugarcoating, no fear of offence, just the truth laid bare. Tune in every Saturday and Sunday at 9 p.m. for Alex Armstrong Tonight, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Well, here at Holbrook Animal Rescue, they're being forced to relocate, and if they can't find a suitable alternative, they'll even be at risk of closing. And I've seen the amazing work that they've done here. Just earlier we met a dog called Essie, who has just found her almost possible forever home literally in the time that we were here. She only came here a couple of days ago, so it's really great work that they do for all animals. Like this one here, this is Torn, he's just a puppy, and I'm also joined by Laura Santini, who runs the shelter. Tell us a bit about Torn here.
So this is just a little fellow that came in, no fault of his own. The people just couldn't cope with him. So he's lively, and he's a half shepherd, half Labrador.
What kind of impact would the possible relocation or even closure have on dogs like this one and all the other animals you have here?
Well, simply that we wouldn't be able to take them. So if the next one comes up like this and we've got nowhere to go, then we just can't take them, obviously. So what happens to them at that point, I don't know, because we don't just take beautiful pups like this. We take the old and the sick and the dogs that other people don't necessarily want to take. So I can't imagine what would happen to some of them. So I don't know. It's sad. It's just a sad situation.
And you've had quite a lot of support from the community here in trying to relocate. What's been there for you in terms of support?
They're absolutely incredible. They've sent 1,000 letters into the council to try and support us and help us and let everyone see the light that, you know, you do actually need animal sanctuaries around. You can't shut them all down. We're always getting phone calls saying how much people like what we do and hope we get our plan in appeal when it goes through and things like that.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun. No, he didn't say that, though. I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's 12 minutes to 10. Welcome back to Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
So, on the front page of the Times today is a report that British special forces could soon be storming Russia's so-called shadow fleet of tankers used to dodge sanctions and bankroll the Kremlin.
The plan would see SBS commandos fast roping from helicopters, capturing ships and crews and cutting off a vital source of cash for Moscow.
Sort of joined now by military veteran and former SAS operative Matthew Hellier. Matthew, good morning to you. If we do go down this route, are we not being sucked ever more likely into some form of military bust-up with Vladimir Putin? Because he's not going to take this lightly, would be my instinct.
Yeah, he's not going to take this lightly at all. However, if Vladimir Putin is in breach of the sanctions that have been imposed by him from the United Nations, it is well within our right to intercept the vessels that we suspect are carrying banned goods or stuff that are violating the trade routes and the sanctions that are posed upon him. It has massive geopolitical considerations when we think about intercepting Russian vessels. You know, this could escalate the war, as you've rightly said. It could bring us into direct conflict. So before we seize any vessels in the international waters, we must first ensure that we have got the legal framework above us, we have the complete evidence package to allow us to intercept these vessels. And I would like to see an international force governed by the United Nations, which overlook the International Maritime Office, to intercept these vessels, rather than bringing us into the forefront all the time and putting Great Britain in direct conflict with Russia.
Matthew, I suppose another way of looking at it would be that Britain has been far too reticent to get involved in policing the seas. And these tankers may nominally be Russian, but they would be seen as stateless. That's the legal advice. We would only do this if tankers were effectively stateless or sanctioned. And we saw just last week how the Americans boarded the Venezuelan tanker that changed its name, Bella One, became the Marinera, and the RAF supported that, and the Russians did not retaliate. Could it not actually be a good thing for Britain's power around the world and our projection of how strong we are to start taking action on issues like this, where there is a clear legal framework, and perhaps with European allies as well?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, it does put us in a good stead for the rest of the world, but it does put us again in the crosshairs of Russia. We do enough on the high seas. The International Maritime Office is based in London, and it's basically governed by Great Britain. It is United Nations, all part of the IMO, which governs the seas, and it is overseen by the UN Convention for Law of the Seas. So we do enough, and we've intercepted 2 vessels in the past couple of years, one in the Black Sea and one, as you remember rightly, in 2022 in Paul. And that was based on the oil sanctions that were imposed on Russia. So already we do enough. It would be good to see a multinational force coming together and intercepting and imposing sanctions on Russia. And I am just worried about the geopolitical considerations. Obviously, there is also environmental considerations we have to worry about. If a vessel does get damaged, then we're going to have to clean up the environmental problems.
It's fascinating, Matthew, because the Times analysis says 107 vessels sanctioned by the UK are sailing under falsified state flags. I mean, this is a massive black market operation going on here. How has it been allowed to flourish for so long?
The law of the seas is a wide and ranging law that is really hard to sanction, to implicate, to action. There's so many different things going on with that, and so many different caveats within that law. It does need a proper legal framework before we intercept any vessels. When we had the height of the piracy going on about 10 years ago, I had a maritime company, and it was really trying to get through barriers, trying to make sure that our legal frameworks were in place just to secure vessels that had legal goods on them. Now, the evidence that is needed to intercept a vessel on the high seas is complex. So we must make sure that we have the right evidence, we have the right legal backing to intercept these vessels. And of course, our soldiers that are going in on top of these vessels, we've got to make sure that they've got the right legal framework to protect them. So when they come back from these highly dangerous operations, they're not held in a court of law in Great Britain like we see now, from former SAS soldiers.
Matthew, Ellie, I'm so sorry. I'm going to have to interject there. We are running out of time, but that is such an important point that if the SAS do get involved, they have to be legally protected. Matthew, Helia, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Really appreciate your time.
And just think about some of our servicemen and women servicemen, of course, in Northern Ireland in the 70s, still facing legal action.
Exactly. Maybe I'm being simplistic, but I think it would be good to enforce some of these sanctions from time to time. Well, don't go anywhere.
Still ahead, we're going to be digging into those labour immigration numbers. This is Britain's Newsroom. Here's the weather.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Boxed Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Good morning, welcome to your latest GB News weather update brought to you from the Met Office. It's going to be a pretty cloudy day today. Outbreaks of rain for most of us, particularly for central and southern areas. But it will be another pretty mild start out there. Lots of cloud around, a bit chilly just to the far north of Scotland. We could see some showers falling as snow over the highest ground here. But further south, you'll see 2 bands of rain bringing a risk of outbreaks of quite heavy rain into this afternoon. The rain becomes more focused into parts of Wales, the Midlands, the southeast this afternoon. To the north and west of that, it will become a little bit drier across parts of Northern Ireland. Some sunshine just to end the day, but it will be a slightly fresher end to the day here. Now the rain continues to sink south and eastwards through this evening, and that means skies become clearer for more northern areas. Still a risk of a few snow showers here and there, just across the Highlands in particular. More eastern areas of Scotland seeing a chilly end to the day, but plenty of clear skies. Northern Ireland as well, plenty of clear skies. There's a risk of ice as we head into this evening on any wet surfaces, particularly across the north. For more central areas, a lot of cloud around this evening. Outbreaks of rain, though the heaviest rain does become more focused to the far south and east, and those clearer skies more widespread as the night goes on. So high pressure is moving in, a ridge of high pressure just for a time as we head towards Wednesday. Wednesday is looking like the best day of the week for dry and sunny weather, but it will be a chilly start. Widespread rural frost is expected on Wednesday. That's away from the very far south and east, so we've got that cloud and rain just clearing through Wednesday morning. So plenty of sunshine throughout the morning. Into the afternoon, more cloud will move into more northwestern areas as the next batch of rain arrives for Wednesday night. But plenty of sunshine lasting much of the day across more eastern areas. It will be a fairly chilly day, though, after the chilly start to the day. Temperatures around average.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Boxed Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Thank you, Britain, for making GB News Radio such a huge success. Whether you're in the car, on the go, or listening at home, thank you for choosing us as your radio station.
Good morning. This is the latest AI travel news from GBNews.com. On the M3 eastbound between Junction 3 and Junction 2, one lane is closed after a crash with delays of around 50 minutes. In Lincolnshire, the A1 between the A151 and the A607 is shut both ways after a collision. In Hertfordshire, the M25 clockwise between Junction 24 and Junction 25 has one lane closed after an incident. And on the trains, East Midlands Railway has disruption between Stoke-on-Trent and Derby, while Great Western Railway is running replacement buses between Liskeard and Looe, with no trains between Par and Newquay. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
There's just 3 weeks left to grab your chance to win our biggest cash prize to date. An incredible £85,000 in tax-free cash could be yours. Cash to make 2026 the year of yes. That's yes to holidays, yes to treats, yes to making all of those dreams come true this year. Just make sure you don't miss out. For another chance to win £85,000 cash, text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB18 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 7 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 30th of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning, it's 10 o'clock on Tuesday the 13th of January. We're live across the United Kingdom. This is Britain's Newsroom with Andrew Pearce and Miriam Cates.
The Home Office says it's cracking down on illegal migration. They say a record number of raids and of arrests have resulted in thousands of deportations. But what of their laughable new tactic to use TikTok as a deterrent?
Not as convinced that the story is as positive as is being spun, but the reality is if huge numbers more people are coming into the country illegally, there is going to be huge numbers more people working illegally in our economy. If you come to this country and break in, you should be removed.
Raids up 3/4 since Labour came to power, but will a TikTok account stop people wanting to come here?
And Britain is preparing to take the fight directly to Putin's war machine, with elite special forces poised to seize Russian oil tankers on the high seas.
Are we losing the ability to build our own military equipment? The UK's last military helicopter factory could be just weeks from closure.
And Donald Trump has imposed 25% tariffs on any country doing business with Tehran as protests across Iran rage and the death toll rises.
Homeschooling is booming in England, but is that a good thing? The watchdog Ofsted now warns too many parents are doing it out of desperation, not conviction, and many children slip through the cracks.
Meanwhile, the Scottish Government is preparing to announce its budget today, but the Prime Minister has been urged to stay out of Holyrood until the May elections. Could be some trouble for Starmer.
And women are being sold comforting myths about fertility while their biological clock ticks. New research shows just how little men are being told and how much they want to know about IVF.
Andrew, maybe I'm being a bit gung-ho, but I quite like the idea of Britain's special forces being used to police some of these sanctions. If there are all these hundreds of Russian tankers that are stateless and banned sailing across the seas and near our waters, I think it's a good idea for us to enforce those sanctions using our special forces.
Yeah, as long as, because he was brilliant, that guy, wasn't he, Matthew Hurley, former SAS guy, they must be given legal protection. Because unfortunately, we now know what's happened to some of our servicemen who served in Northern Ireland in the 70s. Some of them are facing criminal prosecutions for defending Queen and country. They were doing their job.
Absolutely.
So is the same going to happen with the SAS? What if the tanker owners sue?
Indeed, well, we don't know what's on these tankers, and significantly, the Venezuelan tanker, Russian tanker that was seized by the US last week, they're taking it all the way back to America before we'll find out what's on it, but we don't think there's any oil on it, and the Russians issued a notice, please don't harm any Russian personnel, which could mean that who knows what's on that boat. But our military veteran did make the point that we would need support from our European allies. We're not capable of performing these kind of operations alone. So, but perhaps there's a route in there for some more British power on the seas.
So what do you think? Send your views, post your comments by visiting
gbnews.com/your say. But first, here's the news with Sam Francis.
Very good morning to you from the newsroom just after 10 o'clock. Well, the top story today, the Home Office has launched its biggest ever crackdown on illegal working, with raids and arrests now at record levels. More than 17,000 raids on nail bars, car washes, barbers and takeaways have led to over 12,000 arrests in just 18 months. Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood says there is no place for illegal working and that migrants in the black economy now have nowhere to hide. Ministers say the surge is designed to choke off the pull factors driving illegal migration. While the Deputy Chairman of the Conservative Party, Matt Vickers, told us earlier that Labour, he says, are to blame for the boom in illegal working.
Anybody caught working illegally should be deported, that the wages that they've managed to get out of that work should be taken from them and used to help remove them from the country. The reality is the government's putting a good spin on numbers today, but the last figures from the National Crime Agency said that 84% of interventions were not high impact, and that actually that numbers were down 16% in their last annual report. So there's different ways to use stats. The government are using them to their best advantage, but the reality is we should be arresting a lot more people who are working illegally, because there are a lot more people coming into the country illegally.
Sir Keir Starmer has warned X that if it can't control its AI tool Grok, the government will, threatening to strip the platform of its right to self-regulate. Media watchdog Ofcom has now launched an urgent investigation into claims that the chatbot is being used to create sexualised images of women and children. The Technology Secretary says such images are weapons of abuse, as ministers move this week to make non-consensual AI pornography a criminal offence. Lord Peter Mandelson has issued a personal apology now to the victims of Jeffrey Epstein for continuing a friendship with him after his conviction. After weeks of backlash, Mandelson finally admitted, "I was wrong to believe him and I apologise unequivocally to the women and girls who suffered," he said. The apology follows his dismissal as UK ambassador to Washington after emails showed he stayed in contact with Mr Epstein years after his conviction in 2008. The Liberal Democrats are promising a legal right to be seen in A&E within just 12 hours, as they accuse both Labour and the Tories of letting patients suffer on hospital trolleys. The £1.5 billion pledge would create thousands of extra beds and scrap a US drug deal that they say is driving up NHS costs. More than 50,000 people waited over that 12-hour limit to be admitted in November alone, with doctors linking delays to thousands of excess deaths. Well, the deputy leader of the Lib Dems, Daisy Cooper, says it's a result of years of failure by successive governments.
Even though it has become normalised, it is devastating for patients and their health outcomes, and it is so demoralising for our NHS staff as well. They hate providing care in corridors, so we absolutely shouldn't blame staff for this. This is a failure of successive governments to get to grips with it, and we Liberal Democrats have got a plan to fix it.
The BBC is moving to have Donald Trump's $5 billion defamation lawsuit thrown out before it reaches trial. Court filings show the broadcaster will argue the Florida court has no jurisdiction and that the Panorama programme didn't defame the president or cause him any harm. The BBC admits the edit was misleading, though, but says Mr Trump was re-elected after it aired, undercutting any claim of damage. If the case proceeds, a trial could take place in 2027. Well, that comes as President Donald Trump has been briefed on covert and military options for Iran, including missile strikes, cyber attacks and psychological operations, according to US defence sources. The White House is weighing what it calls very strong options, as more than 600 protesters are now reported killed in Iran's recent crackdowns. Tehran says it is open to talks, but also prepared for war, while Mr Trump warns the US may have to act before negotiations even begin. Britain has no plan to defend itself in the event of war, including how to mobilise the National Health Service, according to the head of the Armed Forces. Air Chief Marshal Sir Richard Knighton told MPs the UK lacks a modern war book to move the country from peace to conflict. He also admitted the defence budget can't cover all current commitments, saying, quote, "If we wanted to do everything in the programme, the answer is no." Ministers say a national defence plan is now being drawn up.
And MPs have clashed in Westminster over a 1 million signature petition calling for a snap general election. That petition, signed by more than 1 million people, claims voters need and want change just 18 months after Sir Keir Starmer's win. Leading the debate, Conservative John Lamont says the public feel utterly betrayed, accusing Labour of having no clear plan for the country. Labour, though, well, they have hit back, warning against what it called knee-jerk democracy, saying voters rejected years of Tory chaos and now want the government to be given time to deliver. Those are the latest headlines. I'll be back with you in around half an hour's time. Now, though, it's over to Andrew and Miriam.
Hello, good morning and welcome. You're watching and listening to Britain's Newsroom. We're live across the United Kingdom on GB News with Andrew Pearce and Miriam Cates.
Miriam's job now. You're going to look at some emails.
I haven't actually. Can you give me some time to prepare?
So we're going to go back to, it's a big story because Labour say there are a record number of enforcement raids on illegal working. They say it's the highest level in British history, albeit, we have to say here, from a very low bar.
But critics claim that despite the encouraging number of crackdown raids, the illegal job economy is still thriving because of Labour's soft position on the borders. And we were just saying in the break, Andrew, weren't we, that with just 9,000 deportations a year, that many people come over in a single month sometimes on small boats.
Because Labour say 50,000 deported. That's not right, actually. 50,000 have gone back, but most of those are voluntarily. 9,000 deported. And in these latest raids on illegal working, which started last summer when they got the election, they've arrested 12,300, but they've only sent back 1,700. And most estimates put the illegal workforce in this country between 700 to 900,000. So
it's a drop in the ocean.
Not even a drop.
Well, let's talk to GB News' political editor, Christopher Hope, crossing live to Westminster. Chris, good morning. You will have heard Andrew and I discussing this just then. The numbers of illegal raids are up on previous years, but it's still a tiny number when you consider how many hundreds of thousands of people who are here overstayed their visas or arrived illegally on the small boat. Is the government just trying to find any win they possibly can for political reasons?
Morning, Andrew. Morning, Miriam. Yes, of course, everything is for political reasons if you're in government. But equally, I think they are trying to demonstrate to people across the channel that if you do come here, there will be a crackdown on illegal working. Part of the problem we have in this country for enforcement officials is we don't have any form of ID to work here. We don't show papers. If asked, we maybe have our own ID, like a passport or a driving licence, but that's not a legal requirement to work here. That's what's changing with this new digital ID being brought forward this month from Darren Jones, who's the Chief Secretary to the Prime Minister. He'll make a big speech and launch a consultation. Many are concerned about that, though, on civil liberties grounds, but they want to use that to try and make it harder to work here illegally. But the figures are enormous, as you've set out there, Andrew. They're on TikTok because they think that's where a lot of the people smugglers work. That's how the people smugglers advertise their wares and the ability to cross to the UK illegally for a few £1,000s. That's why they're there. We'll see if that has any bearing at all. Now, earlier, GB News spoke to Alex Norris, who's the Minister in charge. Here's what he told us.
Those crossings are unacceptable. We're as angry as you are and as angry as your viewers are. That's why we're putting in place the changes that we've put in place, which is we're reducing the protection time for individuals who come here seeking sanctuary. We are lengthening the path to settlement for people who come illegally to 20 years. We are stopping and preventing with our work with France crossings, some 22,000 crossings prevented, and then we're really stepping up our removals activity.
Alex Norris there talking to GB News. Now, many of these illegal workers, they work in nail bars, in barbers and car washes. It shows to me how the politics has changed because Reform UK, I can remember Richard Tice raising those issues. Where are all these barbers coming from on our high streets and being attacked by the left for saying that? Well, that's where they end up working. I think there's now more of a grown-up approach towards this. They can see they need to get involved. We're looking on screen there of how they do actually do raids. Often, I think that was on a construction site because I was there for that raid, just seeing, or perhaps not that one, but they do these raids around the country, and of course they sometimes take the cameras with them.
And Chris, I'm just curious about the politics of this because we know Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary, She talks the talk, tough talk on immigration. She's a Muslim. She's got an inner city seat in Birmingham. Very ambitious. Some see her as a potential Labour leader. Why isn't she trumpeting these figures from the rooftops? Why is she putting out, with all respect to Alex Norris, an obscure junior minister that nobody's ever heard of?
I don't know why that is. She may not be around today. We haven't seen her speak at all since the new year. That is surprising because she is someone who is seen as a possible successor to Sir Keir Starmer. I don't think she's been sat on by number 10. I think it'll be a choice made privately by the team around her. They are trying to push her out there. We've interviewed her for GB News. I feel we're getting more access to her than we have under previous Labour Home Secretaries. So I think she is very promising. But perhaps I don't know. I mean, there could be multiple reasons. I mean, there might be a question to ask her about this Chinese embassy. All over the front page of today's Telegraph, they've got the unredacted map of the 208 secret rooms at the bottom of this possible embassy on the site of the Royal Mint in the City of London. There are concerns there that there's a particular room that goes alongside important cables run by BT, Colt Technologies, Verizon Business to Canary Wharf. Now, the problem and the worry is for some individuals who are critical of China is that might allow the Chinese to tap into those wires and find out information or maybe sabotage trading going into the city. The government says there are no problems here. They say the Home Office and the Foreign Office, which are in charge of MI5 and MI6, they say that all the security implications of the planning application have now been addressed. I happen to know there are around half a dozen Chinese operations in London, and the idea, we think, is to put them all into one place, which could make it easier for our security services to monitor just one building rather than half a dozen around London.
And of course, it's on the front page of the Telegraph, not least, Chris, this week, because we know the Prime Minister, we think, is going to give approval to this embassy this week ahead of his visit to China later this month.
That's right. It's been widely reported we're expecting the PM to go to China maybe as early as this month. And before that, it looks like the quid pro quo could be approval of that. The choice, though, stays with the Housing and Local Government Secretary. And it's up to him to decide what to do.
Christopher Hope, thank you so much for your time this morning. And Andrew, actually, our viewers are interested in this issue. Ted says, our government is now totally pro-China at the cost of our country. It's giving away a strategic NATO base. Now it's looking to allow China to build a super embassy over strategic communication routes. And Tony makes the point, funny how they're using Chinese TikTok videos for their immigration crackdown.
And this TikTok,
interesting.
And this TikTok video, presumably, is going to show some of the raids on illegal workings, trying to deter people.
And ironically, TikTok has actually been one of the sources of information to people gangs, telling them how to get in.
Well, they advertise on there, the people gangs, unbelievably.
Indeed, TikTok is definitely the new form of communication. Well, friends of GB News can vote on this very question in our You Decide poll by scanning the QR code that's on your screen now. And today we're asking, can TikTok deter the small boats? I think Andrew
we
has
know
a
the answer to
answer.
that. Ridiculous.
You never know. You should.
I thought they were going to smash the gangs. Remember that?
Well, this is their secret strategy.
There we are. Not so strategic. Now, lots of you getting in touch this morning to have your say on this. Become a friend of GB News for a limited time. Friends could win one of 50,000 GB News bumper stickers. Just like this one.
As soon as I get home, I'm going to put it on my car.
Yeah, I put it on my car, but I don't.
You don't have a car.
Exactly.
Becoming a friend of GB News is free. It lets you have your say and be part of our shows every day on TV and radio. Plus, if you sign up by January 31st, you could win one of 50,000 limited edition GB News bumper stickers. To become a friend and for your chance to win, go to gbnews.com/bumper sticker now or scan the QR code on screen. 18 plus, UK only. Full T&Cs at gbnews.com/terms of use.
Now, let's go back to the ongoing story in Iran. President Trump has weighed in on the ongoing anti-government protests in Tehran and across the country, which have lasted for over 2 weeks now.
He says those countries which trade with Iran, including Brazil and China, will face a 25% tariff in response to the rising number of people killed in the streets. However, he's not issued a presidential executive order yet, so that is just, so far, a claim or a threat.
And human rights observers are now saying that the number of deaths during the unrest could be close to 650, although many commentators are saying that the numbers could be in the thousands.
Let's talk to David Blair, Chief Foreign Affairs commentator at the Daily Telegraph, who joins us now. David, good morning. Always good to talk to you. The truth is, we've really no idea how many people have been killed because for 4 days the internet was shut down by the mullahs. And Donald Trump was talking much more bullishly about a week ago about military action. I'd say his language has been moderated somewhat, David.
Yes, I think that's right. Taking military action against Iran is a huge operation with enormous risks, and it's not clear what the objective would be. If you're going to try and topple the regime, you need to launch a huge operation, probably beginning with decapitation strikes, and then you would have to hit all the critical regime infrastructure. America at the moment doesn't actually have an aircraft carrier in the Gulf, and there's been no visible military buildup. Things could have been happening behind the scenes that we don't know about, but it doesn't seem that they're completely prepared for something like that. Alternatively, they can try something smaller designed to paralyze the regime's response to the protests. But if you do that, it's not entirely clear what would follow, and it doesn't mean that the protests would still necessarily succeed in bringing down the regime. So it's a big decision for the president.
We do understand, though, that the French have recalled their non-essential embassy staff, suggesting that at least some Western powers do think that the regime is about to fall, or certainly that civil war is starting to ensue. Do you think these protests could actually be the ones that bring down the regime where previous protests have failed to do so?
The short answer is it's very unlikely. The regime mounted a ferocious crackdown over the weekend, killing, as you said, certainly hundreds of people, possibly thousands. We really don't know. Yesterday, the regime filled the streets of Tehran with a march of its supporters. They're trying to reclaim the streets. The Ayatollah, the supreme leader, Khamenei, last Friday, said that anyone protesting in the streets was a foreign hireling, that was his phrase, doing the bidding of the President of the United States. That's the signal to the security forces that they can do whatever they want. And that crackdown could succeed. It's a really difficult thing to bring down a regime as entrenched and as ruthless as this one.
This time, David, part of the problem for the mullahs is the economy has completely tanked. Rampant inflation, over 40%. The currency has collapsed. The cost of rice and bread, basic food, is out of the reach of some families, which is why you're even seeing middle-class shopkeepers taking to the streets. Could that be, in the end, the economy stupid, which could bring about the end of the revolution?
The economy's wrecked. The regime has no answers to that problem, no solutions whatever. Iran is isolated. They got hammered by America and Israel in the brief war last June. They're paralyzed on every front. The one thing they can do is kill people in the streets and mount a crackdown against the protests. They proved in the last few days that they can still do that. And for as long as they're able to do that, then the odds must be that the regime will survive. The question is whether an American military intervention could somehow change that. You know, could the Americans paralyze the regime to the extent that it can't use force to maintain its position? And we simply don't know the answer to that.
David Blair, as always, thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us this morning. David Blair there from The Telegraph. Andrew, I do think sometimes we see Trump as so haphazard, he shoots from the hip, but actually if you look back through the events that have happened, these protests were precipitated after the war against Iran ruined their currency value. Of course, the fact that Israel has been allowed to decapitate Hezbollah and Hamas. There could be a strategy behind this that does end in the fall of the mullahs.
I think there is. I think there is. And you never quite know what he's going to do next. And remember, nobody saw what came in Venezuela. Came out of the clear blue sky.
And again, part of a strategy to isolate China, Iran, Russia.
Exactly.
Could all be part of the same
And also part of his strategy to dominate the Western Hemisphere. Now, up next, this is truly shocking. A Labour Jewish MP's visit to a local school cancelled after protest from pro-Palestinian teachers. Can you believe this?
Well, we'll be getting the latest on that and other stories in the papers today with Emma Trimble and Nigel Nelson. There they are. You're watching Britain's Newsroom on GB News. Don't go away.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk then?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up? About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
I saw the other day, I was walking down the street and there was a toddler with an iPhone holder attached to its buggy, you know, just staring blankly at this screen. That toddler wasn't on social media, it wasn't interacting with it, but it was still a screen. And of course, we've now got EdTech being rolled out across more and more schools. So the kids just can't get away from the screens. Sometimes that is down to, you know, parental involvement, parental responsibility. Often it's not. Often it's schools that are now mandating screen use. But all in all, it makes for a bleak and rather depressing picture of childhood.
It really does. And I mean, you know that we've discussed this. So I'm very lucky in the school that Alice is in that they will listen to me because they've got small classes. And I have got them to give Alice's homework on paper. She doesn't get a sign-on to play the games, to learn her times tables, because I tried it and I saw instantly how she was addicted to winning stars, addicted to moving to the next level without actually still learning her 5 times tables. And I think people think that it looks really cool for a child to learn something on a game, but actually it's not developing their brain in the way that we know it should be developed.
No, I mean, the evidence is relatively clear on this now, that certainly for primary kids and by and large for secondary kids, the evidence base that would show, you know, net benefit is it better or is it worse in pure educational attainment terms for kids to learn on screens versus old school pen and paper. The evidence is relatively clear that old school pen and paper has a number of benefits that are completely negated with screen use. So, you know, reading, writing, literacy is absolutely core to education and learning.
GB News, the People's Channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
It's 26 minutes past 10. You're watching and listening to Britain's Newsroom with Andrew Pearce and Miriam Cates.
Time for the Great British Giveaway. Clock's ticking. You can win £85,000 tax-free. You have to be in the draw to make it yours. Here's how you do it.
There's just 3 weeks left to grab your chance to win our biggest cash prize to date. An incredible £85,000 in tax-free cash could be yours. Cash to make 2026 the year of yes. That's yes to holidays, yes to treats, yes to making all of those dreams come true this year. What would you spend all of that cash on? 2026 could be the year you spend more time spending with an incredible £85,000 in your bank. Just make sure you don't miss out. For another chance to win £85,000 cash, text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB18 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 30th of January. The winner may be contacted live on GB News, week commencing 9th of February. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Welcome back. We are joined by GB News senior political commentator Nigel Nelson and writer and broadcaster Emma Trimble in the studio. Good morning to you both. Here for our paper review. Should we start with this story in The Times, which is just shocking and actually has united people across the political divide.
Yeah.
Jewish MPs' school visits were scuppered by pro-Palestine teachers. This MP was not allowed to visit a school in his constituency in case he upset pro-Palestine teachers.
Appalling.
Yeah, so Damien Egan, Labour MP, he had a campaign basically organised against him by the Palestine Solidarity Campaign and the National Education Union. And they apparently...
There's a Palestine Solidarity Campaign within the National Education
Well,
Union.
I think that they were working
Dear
together
God.
on this, but I think it's a separate campaign, but obviously we know that the Education Union is quite a radical...
improving school standards.
But the thing is, the reason why they've basically no-platformed him from going to this school, they said it would inflame the teachers, and apparently the teachers threatened to wear keffiyehs to the school. And I think if anything is a threat to the students, surely it's teachers that are so radical that they would wear something like the keffiyeh. It's partly because he's the vice chair of Labour Friends of Israel, but he's obviously a Jewish MP, and so, like you say, people across the spectrum are quite angry about this, rightly.
I think it's deplorable.
Well, you just said it united right across the political divide. I think it unites us all here.
Yes.
It is. I mean, Steve Reed, the Communities Secretary, described it as outrageous. That's the right word for it. It is outrageous. An MP should be able to visit anywhere in their constituency, and especially a school. So if they're stopping students actually listening to what he's got to say, that's an infringement on free speech. But quite honestly, for an MP not to be able to go and see one of his own schools in his own constituency is quite appalling.
I think the head teacher should be called in by somebody. I don't know if it's Ofsted or their...
And it sounds like that might be happening.
All of the teachers who have been involved in this should be hauled before some kind of accountability.
But the problem is, Emma, that this is one school, obviously, that we know about. But I suspect that the problem is not isolated to one school, that huge proportions of the teaching profession are radicalised and they don't see what's wrong with their view. They believe that pretty much everybody agrees that Israel is committing genocide and that they have a moral duty to protect people from the Israeli point of view. They believe it that strongly. Children are being taught by these teachers. We're having a discussion about homeschooling today. If, as a parent, you know that this is what teachers believe and you firmly disagree with it,
but teachers can believe what they like, but they also must believe that kids have a right to actually
hear both sides.
Both sides of the story.
They do not act on that, and you find this in a whole range of issues. You go into many, many state secondary schools in this country, you will find the trans progress flag, and actually, indicating that this school believes that men can become women.
It's like you say, it's been the same for every big political movement, whether it was Black Lives Matter, whether it was... and actually, to be honest, climate change, I think, as well, should be put in amongst this. The trans debate, that not just... schools, educational institutions like universities, but also institutions across British society, whether it's libraries, museums, they take the view that these things are not political causes because they're right. And that's their opinion, that they're right, and therefore that this isn't being politically partisan, even though these are highly contested issues. And I really do think that we need to start having some serious accountability for teachers. I mean, it's simply the threat that they would go in wearing a keffiyeh, which is it would have been a very explicit mark of their protest. These are teachers who are not fit to be... and when you see that the teacher who was banned for telling students that Britain is a Christian country, which is historically factual, and then you have teachers who are being, banned for all sorts of things, and yet this sort of thing is allowed to continue. It's awful.
The head teacher has to be hauled over the coals for
this.
this.
I think we must be careful not to broaden the issue out. I mean, you mentioned trans, climate change and so on. I don't think we need to go there.
Come on, Nigel. It's an omni-cause.
No, hang on. The issue is an MP cannot visit a school in his own constituency. That's the issue, and I think that's the point that we stick to, and that's what the
But it's not an isolated issue.
That is the specific issue, but it is part of a broader issue of certain things not being recognised by schools and by the National Education Union as being inappropriately partisan, and inappropriately partisan behaviour on the part of politicised teachers. That's the issue, is that they don't recognise that this is highly ideological and not appropriate in school. So, yes, the specific issue is that this guy should have been allowed to visit the school in his constituency, but the reason for that is partly because these teachers think it's acceptable to stop the teacher from going to the school.
Is a place of learning.
Of course.
Learning about all aspects.
And it must be open to different ideas.
Yeah.
And that's really important.
I wonder how vocal the parents are in this debate.
Well, I mean, the argument was there would be a protest outside at a point when the kids might be leaving, and that was a safeguarding issue. But that takes away from the point. Basically, is that MP should have been allowed in a school in his constituency.
Nigel, Emma, thank you so much. More from you in an hour. It'd be great to discuss this Guantanamo detainee who's being paid an enormous amount of compensation by the taxpayer.
Well, via the Prime Minister's great chum, Attorney General Lord Hermer. Here we go again.
Yes, Starmer and Hermer. What's Freudian slip there?
Who's a complete disaster in that job.
Well, let's move on now to our 60-second news update with the wonderful, brilliant, talented Sam Francis, who's clearly been editing the auto cue.
Too kind. Here are the top stories just after 10:30. The Home Office has launched its biggest ever crackdown on illegal working, with more than 17,000 raids and 12,000 arrests in just 18 months. The Home Secretary says there's now nowhere for migrants to hide. But the Conservatives accuse Labour of letting illegal immigration boom.
Anybody caught working illegally should be deported, that the wages that they've managed to get out of that work should be taken from them and used to help remove them from the country.
Breaking in the last few minutes, now confirmed that more than 2,000 protesters are dead in Iran, as Tehran says it is prepared for war after protests. President Trump has been brought on missile strikes, cyber attacks and covert action against Iran. Here, Sir Keir Starmer has warned X to get control of its AI chatbot Grok or face government intervention. Ofcom, the regulator, is investigating claims it's being used to create sexualised images of children and women as ministers move to criminalise AI-generated abuse. Lord Peter Mandelson has now apologised to Jeffrey Epstein's victims for staying friends with him after his conviction. He admits, "I was wrong to believe him." That's after losing his job as UK ambassador to Washington. The Liberal Democrats are promising a legal right to be seen in A&E within 12 hours. They say more than 50,000 people waited that long in November alone, calling it the result of years of government failure.
It is devastating for patients and their health outcomes, and it is so demoralising for our NHS staff as well. They hate providing care in corridors.
And the BBC is trying to have Donald Trump's $5 billion lawsuit thrown out before trial. It says a Florida court has no jurisdiction, and Trump was still re-elected anyway. Those are the latest headlines. I'll hand you back now to the brilliant, the talented, the wonderful Miriam Cates.
Take the GB News family with you on any device. As long as you have an internet connection, tune into GB News anywhere on the planet or beyond.
I'll see that Sam Francis outside, let me tell you.
It was a glaring omission there. We can also be auto cue for next time.
Now up next,
Avengers speak.
Are women being sold comforting myths about fertility? We'll find out more about the truth about IVF. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Good morning, welcome to your latest GB News weather update brought to you from the Met Office. It's going to be a pretty cloudy day today. Outbreaks of rain for most of us, particularly for central and southern areas. But it will be another pretty mild start out there. Lots of cloud around, a bit chilly just to the far north of Scotland. We could see some showers falling as snow over the highest ground here. But further south, you'll see two bands of rain bringing a risk of outbreaks of quite heavy rain into this afternoon. The rain becomes more focused into parts of Wales, the Midlands, the southeast this afternoon. To the north and west of that, it will become a little bit drier across parts of Northern Ireland. Some sunshine just to end the day, but it will be a slightly fresher end to the day here. Now the rain continues to sink south and eastwards through this evening, and that means skies become clearer for more northern areas. Still a risk of a few snow showers here and there, just across the Highlands in particular. More eastern areas of Scotland seeing a chilly end to the day, but plenty of clear skies. Northern Ireland as well, plenty of clear clear skies. There's a risk of ice as we head into this evening on any wet surfaces, particularly across the north. For more central areas, a lot of cloud around this evening. Outbreaks of rain, though the heaviest rain does become more focused to the far south and east, and those clearer skies more widespread as the night goes on. So high pressure is moving in, a ridge of high pressure just for a time as we head towards Wednesday. Wednesday is looking like the best day of the week for dry and sunny weather, but it will be a chilly start. Widespread rural frost is expected on Wednesday. That's away from the very far south and east, so we've got that cloud and rain just clearing through Wednesday morning. So plenty of sunshine throughout the morning. Into the afternoon, more cloud will move into more northwestern areas as the next batch of rain arrives for Wednesday night. But plenty of sunshine lasting much of the day across more eastern areas. It will be a fairly chilly day, though, after the chilly start to the day. Temperatures around average.
Thank you, Britain, for the thousands of you who are becoming friends of GB News every week.
You're not only watching and listening to our programmes, you're becoming part of them too.
Good morning, this is the latest AI travel news from GBNews.com. On the M8 westbound, the junction 6A on slip is closed for planned roadworks. In Lincolnshire, the A1 northbound is shut between the A151 and the A607 after a road traffic collision, with reopening expected after 11:15 this morning. In Surrey, the M3 eastbound between Junction 3 and Junction 2 has a crash with one lane closed and around 15 minutes of delays, easing after 11:13. And on the trains, East Midlands Railway has disruption between Stoke-on-Trent and Derby, and Great Western Railway is running road transport between Liskeard and Looe, with no trains between Par and Newquay. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Welcome back. It's 20 to 11. You're watching Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
We're going to go to Downing Street because the Prime Minister is meeting...
No,
we're not going to the Prime Minister. Oh, good, because I didn't want to see him anyway. What we are going to share with you, though, is a major UK study. I'll get into trouble for that. Which reveals a stark truth. Fewer than 1 in 5 women really understand how low IVF success rates are when you get a little bit older.
Yet when they're offered honest information, most women say they gladly check their egg reserve or freeze their eggs earlier on in their life. Well, we're now joined by the director of the Centre for Family and Education at Centre Right, Peter Brooks. Peter, good morning. Thank you so much for joining us in the studio. Now, this is a really interesting issue. Lots of people think that if they leave it too late to have children naturally or they have struggles falling pregnant, they can fall back on IVF as a kind of insurance choice. But that's not always entirely true.
That's exactly right. So the chances of successful IVF also decrease with age quite markedly. By about 40 years old, the chances are about 1 in 6. And you might look at that and go, well, 1 in 6 chance, I could do a couple of cycles, it'll work out. But that's 1 in 6 chance of a pregnancy. That's not even 1 in 6 chance of having a successful birth at the end of it.
You're saying because they're a bit older, the pregnancy may not go to full term anyway?
Yeah, exactly, yeah. And obviously miscarriage rates are quite significant at all ages, but they also increase with age.
I'm looking at some of the statistics here, and obviously they do vary around the world, but it says for a woman aged 43 to 44, the chance of a live birth, so you say not just a pregnancy, but a live birth following an embryo transfer is only about 7 or 8%. And there's only a limited amount of IVF cycles you can go through for financial reasons. Also, it takes a toll on your body and perhaps your relationships as well.
Yes, definitely. I was speaking to a friend about this last year, and he said to me that he felt the IVF clinics oversold their chances. And him and his wife, they're both successful lawyers. They left it quite late, into their late 30s. And then they were going through round after round, and it's quite painful, the injections you have to take. The hormone changes make it quite, for some women, it's quite emotionally burdensome. And he felt it took a toll on their marriage. They ended up separating. They did manage to get twin girls, but that was after a lot of trying. And perhaps they would have had a third had it been an easier process. So this is the misinformation, frankly, about the chances of just leaving things are causing real human impacts.
And Peter, what does it cost? If I say, on average, perhaps a woman of 40 goes through a course of IVF, what is it going to cost her and her partner?
It really depends because different NHS trusts have different amounts of IVF cycles that they offer for free. So it tends to be typically 1 to 3 cycles that they offer, which makes a real kind of postcode lottery.
But roughly, what is the price?
It's usually a few thousand.
A few thousand.
Yeah.
And if you did it privately, not more expensive.
So that would be once you're off the funded NHS cycles.
So what do you think the result of education could be then? Because what this study is showing is that many, many women have no idea how unlikely they are to conceive by IVF, or frankly, naturally. I think most people think that fertility drops off a cliff at 35, but actually it declines steadily from 19. I think if people knew about natural fertility drop-off, they'd be more likely to try for children earlier. Was it more complicated than that?
I think it's definitely most likely. So the study that you have mentioned, fewer than 20% of women realised the declined chances of IVF past 40, and there is some information that when you give people information, when you inform them, they are then more likely to intend to have kids earlier and more likely to have children earlier. There isn't a huge amount of research on this, but the research that there is that follows people up for a few years suggests that it makes a real impact.
This could have quite a dramatic impact on women who want to pursue want to pursue their career. They want to do their career first and then have a family. This could have quite a telling impact on this ambition. This research?
Yeah, it's always a difficult question of how do you, what do you do first, or can you do both? And it doesn't
You can't have everything.
It doesn't look like there are easy answers, yes.
And just very briefly, what's your centre trying to do? What are you trying to achieve?
We're trying to inform people so that people can make the right decisions for them, so people can know what the trade-offs are and make them accurately. Because what we see at the moment is people consistently have not only fewer children than they would like to have, but also fewer children than they intend to have. So this is clear evidence that people are not working it out. They're not properly informed to be able to make the right trade-offs for them.
Well, Peter Brooks, thank you so much.
Really
Important issue. Thank you so much for coming into the studio, and do get in touch if you've got any views on the issue as well.
Now, it's budget day if you're in Scotland, which is the same country which has told the Labour Party there has told Sir Keir Starmer to stay away from the Scottish Parliament Holyrood. We'll find out why next. But first, that elusive holiday sun, here it is.
I forecast a perfect holiday in the sun.
Weather looking good then?
For sure, and no worries about our travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
Hello. If you're heading away for some winter sun, there's plenty of sunny weather across the Mediterranean, into Spain and Portugal, some wet weather through the rest of this week, but plenty of sunshine for parts of the Mediterranean, particularly into Greece. A risk of showers for Italy, parts of Croatia as well through this week, but it's Spain and Portugal that's seeing the particularly wet weather through the rest of this week. Slightly fresher feel for the Canary Islands on Wednesday, but it does look like temperatures come up more closer to those 19-20 degrees by the weekend.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, D.C.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions. But every Friday night at 9 p.m, you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/your say.
There, you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/your say, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
Because
the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m.
Only on GB News.
Welcome back. It's 11 minutes to 11. You're watching Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
So the Scottish Finance Secretary, that's their Chancellor effectively, Shona Robertson, will today deliver her budget to Scottish members of the Scottish Parliament at Holyrood, vowing to resolutely focus on people's priorities.
Well, with the number of Scots dragged into the higher tax band more than doubling in the last decade, will the SNP risk raising income tax in an election year?
Opposition parties say voters are sick to death of the tax man's take while public services are suffering. Tony Maguire, our very own Scotland correspondent, looks ahead to this afternoon's budget statement.
6 weeks after Rachel Reeves delivered her autumn budget, it's Scotland's turn to find out the financial winners and losers of 2026. Finance Secretary Shona Robertson has vowed to resolutely target Scotland's key priorities, with a focus on the NHS and the cost of living. Her renewed focus on affordability has the backing of the First Minister.
The best way to make daily life more affordable for people is for Scotland to become an independent country.
With £60 billion to manage, tax and spending changes will stress test the electorate, just 4 months before Scotland heads to the polls. Sitting opposite the SNP, leader of the Scottish Conservatives, Russell Findlay, says Scots have had enough of being squeezed on tax.
Making the cost of living more affordable must be our top priority in 2026 and beyond. There's this kind of doom and gloom that somehow the Scottish Parliament will always be trapped in this cycle of increasing taxes and spending more and never making meaningful savings, and there is another way.
Compared to England's 3 tax bands, Scotland has 6, with some or all potential targets for tax raising. Despite another record-high devolution grant, Scottish ministers say the annual payment still falls £4.7 billion short of their public services goal, including a £2 billion devolved benefits bill. Scottish Secretary Douglas Alexander says the SNP have left public services in the lurch.
We haven't seen the rise in educational standards in our schools. We haven't seen the rate of fall of waiting lists or waiting times that we would want to see in our public services. So it's really important when the budget happens next week that we see not just value for money, but also a material improvement in public services, because frankly, Scotland's public services have been done a great disservice. Where's the money gone, John?
With the SNP Holyrood group reduced to just 60 MSPs, backroom deals with other parties will be necessary to get the budget over the line on February 25th. Tony Maguire, GB News.
Tony, thank you very much for that report. I mean, it is extraordinary, Andrew, isn't it? That we're joined by Tony.
Tony, this budget is a crucial one for the Scottish National Party government because we have the crucial elections in May for the Holyrood Parliament. You would think, after the chaos in the SNP ranks with the resignation of Nicola Sturgeon, the arrest of her husband over financial issues as chief executive of the SNP, that it would be a doddle for Labour to win win Scotland back. But it's not looking like that, and this budget will be crucial.
Yeah, that's right. I think if we go back to the time of the general election, then many would have said that with the number of MPs that Labour sent down from Scotland, that this year's election and for the Holyrood Parliament was Labour's to lose, and it just under 18 months it very much looks like that is what is going to happen. All to play for, of course, still 4 months away, but it is a really important budget, not just for Shona Robison. This is her last budget. She is going to be standing down at the upcoming election, one of many senior, highly experienced SNP MSPs to do so. But this is really going to be walking a tightrope. The SNP that essentially is going to be looking at the forthcoming election as their first major electoral test under John Swinney. He was only sworn in about a month before the general election for Westminster. But many calls from across the Parliament and from across Scotland last minute for Shona Robison to take their pleas into consideration. We heard from various child advocate groups to try and keep the money that the Scottish Government's going to save from the two-child benefit cap and keep that in the Social Security Fund. And then, of course, Labour, we now know, is going to essentially stand back and see what happens at this budget. They're not going to vote on it, they're going to abstain. And of course, Anas Sarwar, well, he wants Keir Starmer to be as far away from this as possible for the election.
Tony, thank you very much for that report. We should be worried about the rich fleeing Scotland even more than England, I think.
Abstaining on a budget.
I know, extraordinary. Well, don't go away. We've got lots more to come on the show. But first of all, let's take a look at the weather.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello, very good day to you. This is your GB News weather update coming to you from the Met Office. It's a bit wet out there at the moment, but also markedly milder than it was this time last week. However, we do have colder air to the northwest of the UK. That's going to make its way southeastwards as we go through the next 12 hours or so. Before that, there are two fronts lying across the country, bringing a fair amount of cloud and rain, particularly across much of England and Wales. A lot of that rain is clearing away towards the east-southeast, but it's going to take quite a while to clear away from some far southeastern parts. Elsewhere, brighter weather pushing its way in, but also a fair few showers across Scotland and Northern Ireland in particular. Like I said, colder air feeding its way in, so turning chillier towards the northwest despite the brighter skies, but staying milder towards the south and southeast. Here, as we go through into the evening, quite cloudy, some damp weather across parts of East Anglia and the far southeast, mostly dry but cloudy in the southwest. Elsewhere, across the rest of England and Wales and also Northern Ireland and Scotland, some decent clear skies as we go through the evening and the start of the night, but also a fair few showers across Scotland and Northern Ireland. And with the cold air across us, some of those showers will be falling as sleet or snow over modest high ground. Most places are going to have a dry night with lots of clear skies, the exception being in the far south-southeast, where it's going to stay quite cloudy, but damp at times, and also more showers piling in across parts of Scotland. But with those clear skies in other areas, well, temperatures are going to drop, widely getting close to, if not below, freezing, so we can expect quite a widespread frost. There will also be some icy patches and some freezing fog patches as well first thing tomorrow morning. Those freezing fog patches could take a little while to clear as we go through the day, but actually otherwise a lot of bright weather for most places, except in the far south-southeast, staying quite cloudy, damp here, and across some western parts of Northern Ireland and Scotland we're going to see cloud and rain feeding in. Despite the bright skies, it is going to be a chilly day for most.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
There's just 3 weeks left to grab your chance to win our biggest cash prize to date. An incredible £85,000 in tax-free cash could be yours. Cash to make 2026 the year of yes. That's yes to holidays, yes to treats, yes to making all of those dreams come true this year. Just make sure you don't miss out. For another chance to win £85,000 cash, text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB18 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 30th of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, D.C.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Bold.
They are under no illusion.
Ray.
Are you a human trafficker?
Boundless. I've had enough of the nonsense, and I'm not afraid to say it.
Don't get us on the BBC.
Every weeknight, I tear through the headlines.
The smell of gasoline. Should we be worried about it?
From Westminster madness to cultural war chaos.
I'm going to do now, they are throwing things out the car as we speak.
Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Patrick Christie's tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, you didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
It's 11 o'clock on Tuesday, 13th of January, live across the UK, Britain's Newsroom with Andrew Pierce and Miriam Cates.
Well, the Home Office is very proud of its crackdown on illegal migrant working, with what they're branding as a record number of raids and arrests, resulting in 50,000 deportations. But will their tactic to use TikTok as a deterrent really work?
Not as convinced that the story is as positive as is being spun, but the reality is if huge numbers more people are coming into the country illegally, there is going to be huge numbers more people working illegally in our economy. If you come to this country and break in, you should be removed.
And Britain is preparing to take the fight directly to Vladimir Putin, with elite special forces poised to seize Russian oil tankers on the high seas.
But are we losing the ability to build our own military equipment? Well, the UK's last military helicopter factory could be weeks from closure.
And Donald Trump is ordering 25% tariffs on any country doing business with Tehran as protests across Iran rage, the death toll rises and speculation mounts of American military intervention.
Well, back home, homeschooling is booming in England, but Ofsted is now warning that too many parents are doing it out of desperation, not conviction, and that some children are slipping through the cracks.
We say that speculation is mounting about military action. The Telegraph is reporting, Miriam, that Donald Trump is telling American citizens, get out of Iran.
Yeah, and the French already have told non-essential embassy staff in Tehran to leave. So it looks like there could be some intelligence that something is about to happen.
We were talking to David Blair earlier from the Telegraph, and of course he says there are no aircraft carriers in the region, but America, of course, is well capable of concealing its military intent.
Yeah.
And that revolution, of course, if there isn't any military intervention, could peter out again.
I mean, what's happening in Iran is absolutely horrific, but it's been so terrible there for so long. We've got lots, of course, Iranians in this country who've fled the regime, who have been making the case for more British support for protesters.
Starmer has been almost mute. I interviewed the Crown Prince of Iran. His father was the last Shah, who actually said to me, I spoke to him in the last few days, he said, why doesn't Starmer speak out? What, because he spoke out, he would speak out on other issues. Why isn't he speaking out? He spoke out all the time about Gaza.
Well, even now, he has said that he won't prescribe the IRGC. Now, you could argue, what's the point of prescribing them, banning them in Britain? But it's a symbol, at least, that we understand that it's a regime that's responsible for international terror.
And the IRGC enforces the mullah's rule all around the world. We think they've been responsible for up to 22 potential attacks on UK citizens. And Starmer says he won't prescribe them. When he was in opposition, he said he would. Another U-turn.
I think the problem is, though, Andrew, we have been here before when, Allied forces, Britain and the US, toppled Saddam Hussein and got involved in Afghanistan, and there are often good reasons for doing this, but the fallout from these kind of interventions can last decades and decades.
Well, Iraq and Afghanistan, they never knew what to do next.
Yes, but that's the question here, isn't it? What comes next after this regime? Well, we'd love to know what you think about this issue, all the other topics we're covering today. Send your views and comments to
gbnews.com/your say, but first here's the news with Sam Francis.
Very good morning to you, 11:03. At the top story this hour, the Home Office has launched its biggest ever crackdown on illegal working, with raids and arrests now at record levels. More than 17,000 raids on nail bars, car washes, barbers and takeaways have led to over 12,000 arrests in just 18 months. Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood says there is no place for illegal working, and that migrants in the black economy now have nowhere to hide. Ministers say the surge is designed to choke off the pull factors that drive illegal migration. Well, earlier today, the Deputy Chairman of the Conservative Party, Matt Vickers, joined us on breakfast, and he told us that he thinks Labour are to blame.
Anybody caught working illegally should be deported, that the wages that they've managed to get out of that work should be taken from them and used to help remove them from the country. The reality is the government's putting a good spin on numbers today, but the last figures from the National Crime Agency said that 84% of interventions were not high impact, and that actually that numbers were down 16% in their last annual report. So there's different ways to use stats. The government are using them to their best advantage, but the reality is we should be arresting a lot more people who are working illegally, because there are a lot more people coming into the country illegally.
Well, next to the latest breaking developments in Iran, where reports in the last few minutes or so have been emerging that 2,000 people have now been killed in the protest crackdown by the regime in Iran, a huge jump from earlier estimates just yesterday reporting a figure of around 600 people, that now up to 2,000. Tehran says the dead include security forces and blames what it calls terrorists, as an internet blackout makes it impossible to verify the true death toll. And that comes as the US now virtual embassy in Iran has issued a blunt warning to American citizens. Leave now. They're urging people to escape by land to Turkey or Armenia if they can. Those who can't are told to hunker down and keep a low profile. Meanwhile, in Washington, Donald Trump has been briefed on covert military options, including missile strikes and cyber attacks. That comes as Iran is saying it is open to talks with the US, but still prepared for war, as pressure mounts over what European leaders now call the regime's final days and weeks. Here, Sir Keir Starmer has warned X that if it can't control its AI tool Grok, well, the government will, threatening to strip the platform of its right to self-regulate. Media watchdog Ofcom has now launched an urgent investigation into claims that the chatbot's being used to create sexualised images of women and children. The Technology Secretary, Liz Kendall, says such images are weapons of abuse, as ministers move this week to make non-consensual AI pornography a criminal offence. Lord Peter Mandelson has issued a personal apology to the victims of Jeffrey Epstein for continuing a friendship with him after his conviction. After days of backlash, Mandelson admitted, "I was wrong to believe him," and issued an apology unequivocally to the women and girls who he said suffered. The apology follows his dismissal as UK ambassador to Washington after emails emerged showing he stayed in contact with Mr. Epstein years after his conviction. The Liberal Democrats are promising a legal right to be seen in A&E within 12 hours, as they accuse both Labour and the Tories of letting patients suffer on hospital trolleys. The £1.5 billion plan would create thousands of extra beds and scrap a US drug deal that they say is driving up NHS costs. More than 50,000 people waited over 12 hours to be admitted in just November alone, with doctors linking those delays to thousands of excess deaths. Well, the Lib Dem Deputy Leader Daisy Cooper says it's the result of years of government failure.
Even though it has become normalised, it is devastating for patients and their health outcomes, and it is so demoralising for our NHS staff as well. They hate providing care in corridors, so we absolutely shouldn't blame staff for this. This is a failure of successive governments to get to grips with it, and we Liberal Democrats have got a plan to fix it.
The BBC is moving to have Donald Trump's $5 billion defamation lawsuit thrown out before it reaches trial. Court filings show the broadcaster will argue the Florida court has no jurisdiction and that the Panorama programme didn't defame the president or cause him any harm. The BBC admits the edit was misleading, but says Mr Trump was still re-elected after it aired, undercutting any claim of damage. If the case proceeds, a trial could take place in 2027. And airports across Central Europe have been forced to shut or slash flights today as freezing rain and ice grip the region. Runways are currently closed in Vienna, in Budapest and in Bratislava, with thick ice reforming even after being cleared, forcing planes to divert. In Prague, flights are running in very limited mode as crews battle to de-ice the runway, and other European airports are expected to reopen later, but delays are likely to continue. Those are the 11 o'clock headlines. I'll be back with you in half an hour.
Thank you, Sam, and welcome back to Britain's Newsroom. You're watching and listening live across the United Kingdom on GB News with Andrew Pearce and Miriam Cates.
Are the texts and emails coming in? Because I don't know.
I know, you never look, and then you rely on me. Yes, they are.
There we are.
Here's an interesting one from Steve. Actually, we haven't looked at this today, but perhaps we will cover it tomorrow. While Starmer and co look to ban the use of X, albeit there are genuine concerns about sexually explicit deepfakes, isn't it ironic that there are no concerns about TikTok, which is actively advertising criminal acts of illegal immigration? I think that is such a good point.
It's a very good point.
And in China, the children aren't allowed on TikTok, or it's a much watered-down version. They're only allowed on for 40 minutes a day, and it's all educational.
Yeah, but the gang smuggling migrants across the channel advertise on TikTok. They flipping advertise on TikTok. So why can't the authorities, French or British, get to the gangs?
You can buy knives on TikTok,
You can.
drugs on TikTok. I agree. It's a much better. If we're going to ban something, I would start with that, definitely.
Now, this is an extraordinary story here. Britain's last military helicopter factory, some of you are going to remember the name of this company, is on the brink of closure. The Westland factory down in Yeovil looks to the government for a make-or-break contract by the end of March.
Well, this comes as Reform UK's deputy leader, Richard Tice, claimed that the army is preparing to buy US Black Hawk helicopters, putting thousands of British defence jobs at risk.
And the reason I mention that Western helicopter, back in 1986, when Mrs Thatcher was in her pomp, Michael Heseltine walked out of Cabinet as Defence Secretary in a bitter row with Thatcher over the Western helicopter factory. And at one point, it looked like Mrs Thatcher may even have to stand down. It was all to do whether it was a European takeover or an American takeover. And now Westland is back in the headlines exactly 30 years later. We're going to talk to Tobias Elwood, who's, of course, a military man and was chairman of the Commons Defence Select Committee. Tobias Elwood, you're barely old. You're old enough, I think, to remember the row over Western helicopter. For me, it's etched in the national psyche because this was a drama that was played out day by day, week by week, Thatcher winning in the end. But how sad would it be if Westland Helicopters closes down?
Well, good morning, and you're right, it would be very sad indeed. I don't think that's quite the case, and there's a lot more detail, as there often is with these sensationalist headlines, that's worth picking up. I mean, firstly, Leonardo is now moving into the drone space. They do a lot of good work there. They've got contracts with the MOD, but they're not making good military helicopters anymore. The bigger picture is that this is all about the aging Puma medium-sized helicopter. And sadly, no decision has been made about that for years to replace, not helped by the churn of defense ministers, changing the spec too often and then having problems of finding the cash. The reality here is that, of course, it's good to have UK equipment, but the soldier, the sailor, the air personnel, the service just wants reliable platforms available. They don't really care who actually makes it. And the days of the UK making military spec rotor platforms, I think, are indeed numbered. But Leonardo needs to advance. For historical reasons, we've propped up these industries to protect jobs. But the worst example of that is Ajax, if you're familiar with the recce vehicle there, designed to keep people in work rather than what's best on the battlefield. Our world is getting so much more dangerous. We need to advance our defense posture, not least in the airspace. We need to make a decision quickly about a medium-sized helicopter lift capability. And at the moment, there's delays, and delays. So we need to let's get on with it. That's what I would suggest.
Now, Mr. Elwood, you said that one of the reasons that we've tried to buy British, as it were, for so long is to prop up jobs and the economy, and I'm sure that's absolutely true. But it's not only for economic reasons, is it? There are also security concerns about being forced to rely on other countries for military equipment. Now, we are a small country. We're never going to be able to make all of our defence equipment. But nevertheless, given, as you say, the world is becoming more dangerous, wouldn't it be sensible actually to reshore some of our defence manufacturing for security reasons?
It is. And I mean, you say something very important. What is therefore the industrial strategy that's going to support us through what increasingly are going to be ever testing times? But you put the point on it yourself, I think. We simply don't have the capability in the full spectrum of warfare to make everything. What I would say is that the insides of any helicopter, any rotary system, any aircraft is full with British capability. Avionics, the engines themselves, the mission systems, we are world leaders. So the fact that we simply don't make the platform, we're no longer making the platform, as long as they're coming from a reliable partner, that's all the more important. But absolutely, yes, security of supply is going to be something that's so important over the next couple of years. Unfortunately, this is falling still on deaf ears because there isn't money in the budget to even make this purchase. That's the problem here, because we're not waking up to increasing our defence spending because of the threats that are coming over the hill.
And that is part of the big problem, isn't it, Mr. Elwood? Because the Prime Minister's talked very bullishly about raising defence spending, raising it to 2.6%, 2.8% of GDP. But we know there's a huge shortfall in the money, and the Treasury is not going to provide the money needed for that massive increase in defence spending. And some people would argue, quite right too, not me, but some people on the left would argue quite right too, they'd rather the money was spent on benefits.
Well, OK, let's just unpick that for a second. If our economy is hit by cyber attacks, if undersea cables are broken, which then affects our ability for our economy to function, that will affect all government departments because the money then will be impacted by our prosperity. So investing in our defence is actually investing in our economy and our security. They are all one of the same thing. And this requires, I think, a debate, a conversation with the British people to say we need to spend more on defence. How do we do it? Whether it's increase in income tax or a joint effort, parties working together to say, let's remove this as a political football. But I'm afraid we're going to wake up and find out the hard way, probably, because there will be a seismic event, an acute attack, where the British people will say, my goodness, yes, we now realise that Russia is at war with us. They're at war with us anyway today, but we're in denial about it. It's a grey zone war where they're trying to affect the way we live, our society directly, and we're oblivious to it. And you're right, there are people saying, no, don't spend any money on defence. We need it here, and that's understandable. More important, therefore, to educate the British people, educate MPs to say, if we don't invest now, we're going to find out the hard way that we should have done it right now.
And just finally, Tobias, I don't know if you've seen the story in the Times today saying that the government has found a legal mechanism by which special forces might be able to intervene on some of these stateless tankers that are being sanctioned and moving through near British coastal waters. Is that something you would support, British forces getting involved in policing the seas?
100%. I just made the point there, is the fact that the seas are just simply so open. We don't have the assets in the Navy to patrol everywhere. So we're already reactive. This is a positive move. It's recognizing and pushing back against Russia, giving what they're doing and probing our waters. Another example of grey zone warfare. The question is that we should be asking ourselves, what is Russia going to do next? And preempt that, to make sure our laws are in place, to give the legal support to our armed forces to intervene, rather than waiting for something to happen, us scratching our heads and saying, well, what can we now do about it?
All right, Tobias, that's Tobias Ellwood, who is a former Conservative MP, former Defence Minister and military man. Up next, the Guantanamo detainee who's received substantial compensation after complaining Britain was complicit in his torture. He was represented by the Attorney General, Lord Hermer, who is Keir Starmer's big buddy.
Well, we'll get the latest on that and much other news too from the papers with Emma Trimble and Nigel Nelson. You're watching Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints. How many fingers have I got up?
About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
11:21, Britain's Newsroom, across the UK with Andrew and Miriam. We're going to be discussing the Guantanamo detainee who's received substantial compensation from you, the taxpayer, after saying Britain was complicit in his torture. Of course we were.
But first of all, time for the Great British Giveaway. Time is ticking on. You've got a chance to win £85,000 in tax-free cash. This is what you have to do.
There's just 3 weeks left to grab your chance to win our biggest cash prize to date. An incredible £85,000 in tax-free cash could be yours. Cash to make 2026 the year of yes. That's yes to holidays, yes to treats, yes to making all of those dreams come true this year. What would you spend all of that cash on? 2026 could be the year you spend more time spending with an incredible £85,000 in your bank. Just make sure you don't miss out. tonight. For another chance to win £85,000 cash, text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB18 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 30th of January. The winner may be contacted live on GB News week commencing 9th of February. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Welcome back. We have some live pictures for you now from Downing Street as the President of Poland, Karol Nawrocki, has arrived for his meeting with Sir Keir Starmer.
Prime Minister will welcome him for a meeting which will talk about shared priorities, but you can imagine a lot of it will be about defence and Ukraine. Poland, of course, has been massively ramping up its defence spending because they obviously fear if Putin wins in Ukraine, where does he go next? The Baltic states, maybe even Poland, which of course is a significant player in NATO. So that's Keir Starmer leading the Polish president into 10 Downing Street.
And a fascinating country. It's been a real economic miracle since it emerged from communism.
Yeah.
Their GDP per capita is rapidly approaching ours.
And lots of the Poles who came here during the expansion of the EU are going back.
Yeah, because the standard of living is so good there now and the infrastructure. Fascinating country.
Now, we've got our panel here. That is lovely Emma Trimble, who used to be a very regular on this programme.
I've moved to Fridays. I miss you, Andrew.
Oh, it's very nice to hear so. And Nigel Nelson. Nigel, no, let's talk to you. Tell us about Keir Starmer's chum, the Attorney-General. Why is he on the front page of the Daily Mail and other papers?
Well, the man who only seems to represent Britain's enemies.
Good point.
The man who has become synonymous with the surrender of the Chagos Islands to a country that is closely allied to China. Also, by the way, represented Shamima Begum before he was appointed Attorney-General. And it turns out has been representing Abu Zubaydah, who was in Guantanamo Bay, very, very well-known figure, maybe not to the public, but certainly to anybody who is, involved in research on counter-extremism, was accused of being a very significant figure in Al-Qaeda, and now has received this huge big payout. I think that this has happened before with people who have been detained in Guantanamo Bay, and you've always got to be very careful with what you say because, it was sort of outside of any judicial system. However, I think that the main point of this story is that it's Lord Hermer, yet again, always siding with Britain's enemies. And I think it sends the message to the British people that at the very, very top, at the very heart of this government are people who do not have Britain's best interests at heart. All you have to look at is the other story today of this enormous embassy that Keir Starmer is giving the green light to, despite the fact that the Chinese super embassy that is going to have a sort of underground bunker right next to our main fibre optic cables. So I think people will be looking at this and thinking, oh, well, surprise, it's this again.
Nigel?
He's a lawyer. The whole point is that Lord Hermer's a human rights lawyer, and yes, he's...
Just like the Prime Minister.
Well, yes, just like the Prime Minister, and as you pointed out, that they are mates, they work together. What is wrong with a lawyer defending somebody and trying to do the best for their client? That this guy, Zubaydah, he's never been convicted. America's withdrawn the charges against him, and what this centres round is that MI5 and MI6 sent questions knowing he was being tortured, and we as a country are against torture, which is right. So that's what he's being compensated for, and Lord Herman represents him before he became Attorney General, doing that. That is what they do, and I don't see why there should be an argument about it.
I think it's because Emma makes the point that it seems so many of Lord Hermer's clients do appear to be people actively conspiring against the British state. Why would you want your Attorney General, your most senior law officer, to have that background? There are so many lawyers who could be Attorney General. And also, why did Starmer appoint his chum to the top.
I mean, Tony Blair did the same thing.
And it was cronyism.
Yeah, well, I mean, if it's someone you know and is actually good at the job, why not?
Is he good at the job?
Emma mentioned the Chagos Islands there. OK, that is controversial, but if we hadn't done that, we had legal judgments coming down the line which would have made our position impossible. We'd never have been able to hold on to the Diego Garcia naval base, which was really, really important strategically. And the danger of actually not having a lawyer doing it properly is that international law would be ignored, and as a result of that, China could always argue that we are an illegitimate occupying power. So that's why it happened.
Emma, I don't have a problem with the fact that Herma represented him at some point in time. I've got a problem with the government approving a massive compensation package to him while he's still in Guantanamo Bay. What's he going to spend it on?
Yeah, I mean, firstly...
Another orange suit.
That's a good point.
Another orange boiler suit.
The thing is, international law, we talk about international law, but countries like China and Russia and our enemies don't abide by international law. It's only ever weaponised against us so that we're not putting the interests of the British by ourselves, not putting and the rule of lawyers, not putting the interest of the British public first. And this point that Robert Jenrick has made, which is why are we prioritising taxpayer money going to this guy?
But you have an international code of behaviour,
and you say that Lord Herma is a lawyer, and it's true. I mean, it's not exactly like lawyers have to swear like a kind of Hippocratic oath that they must defend anybody in need. However, it isn't like a taxi rank, and so it does say something when people tend to prefer to defend a certain type of person, and that certain type of person tends to be somebody who is, not necessarily in the British interest.
Well, hang on, he's a human rights lawyer. He's chosen to specialise in human rights, and so the cases that he's tended to take on involve human rights. I mean, that seems to be reasonable, like a historian would actually work on history.
But I don't think that many members of the British public will be happy about him being Attorney General. If he wants to do that, fine, but I don't think he's the most suitable Attorney General.
I think that's right.
And I think that Robert Jenrick is right. I mean, we're always told abide by international law, but so often this is causing us to basically eschew the duty of the government to the British population, whether it's relating to, not being able to control our borders, allowing dangerous people...
ignore the law. And the whole point about international law is to have some kind of global code of behaviour.
Yeah, but it doesn't work when you have Britain's enemies that are...
No, I mean Russia's a classic example, but we accuse Russia of an illegal war in Ukraine based on international law. So we can.
But they don't care.
No, I don't know they don't. They don't care, but it doesn't mean that we then have to break the law just because somebody else does.
No, but sometimes I think you have to make pragmatic judgments on these things, and I think, as we discuss on this channel time and time again, very often the judgments of international courts go against the interests of the British public. And if it's stopping us, like the ECHR, if it's stopping us from being able to remove people who shouldn't be in this country, and it's causing us to put the British public in danger, at risk, what about their rights? What about compassion towards them? So I think that people, yes, there's a place for international law, and yes, there's a place for human rights lawyers, but I think the British public are frankly fed up.
I agree with you. As I often do,
Fascinating debate, which is probably at the heart of almost everything that people in this country disagree with.
I agree.
Thank you both for that fascinating discussion. We'll be back with more soon.
60-second news update now with Sam Francis.
Very good morning to you, 11:30 exactly. The top story this hour, the Home Office has launched its biggest ever crackdown on illegal working, with more than 17,000 raids and 12,000 arrests in just 12 months. The Home Secretary says there is now nowhere to hide. But the Conservatives accuse Labour of letting illegal immigration boom.
Anybody caught working illegally should be deported, that the wages that they've managed to get out of that work should be taken from them and used to help remove them from the country.
Well, more than 2,000 protesters are now reported dead in Iran as Tehran says it's prepared for war amid protests. President Trump has been briefed on missile strikes, cyber attacks and possible covert action against Iran. Here, Sir Keir Starmer has warned X to get control of its AI chatbot Grok or face government intervention. Ofcom is investigating claims now it's being used to create sexualised images of women and children as ministers move to criminalise AI-generated abuse. Lord Peter Mandelson has now apologised to Jeffrey Epstein's victims for staying friends with him after his conviction. He admits, "I was wrong to believe him." That's after losing his job as UK ambassador to Washington. The Liberal Democrats are promising a legal right to be seen in A&E within 12 hours. They say more than 50,000 people waited that long in November alone, calling it the result of years of failure.
It is devastating for patients and their health outcomes, and it is so demoralising for our NHS staff as well. They hate providing care in corridors.
And the BBC is trying to have Donald Trump's $5 billion lawsuit thrown out before trial. It says a Florida court has no jurisdiction and Trump was re-elected anyway. Those are the latest headlines. I'll be back with you for a full roundup at midday.
For all the latest from GB News whilst you're on the go, get the GB News app. Scan the QR code now to download or visit gbnews.com/app.
Well, coming up at noon, we've got Good Afternoon Britain with Tom and Nana. They're here in the studio now. Welcome to you both. What's going to be your top story this afternoon?
Well, there's a lot of migration, isn't there? There's a lot of question marks over the government's strategy. They're trying to boast a lot of wins. They're setting up a new TikTok account, which I think has got all of 200 followers. I'm sure it will be incredibly influential.
240, I think it was.
Oh, wow.
And it had about 9,000 views the last time I looked. It's really bad.
Yeah, look, here's the thing. I think the government is trying to copy what Donald Trump is doing on this, because the White House has put out a number of videos. They're incredibly effective. They cause great controversy. But the thing is, the videos don't exist in a vacuum. The videos are documenting an incredibly harsh border crackdown that has virtually stopped southern border crossings in the United States. Now, you can't do a video on the stoppage of small boat crossings in the United Kingdom because it hasn't happened. 40,000 people came across by small boat last year.
I mean, they must be laughing, really, at that. It was a pathetic attempt, really, to be honest.
I know, and they're talking about the crackdown on illegal workers. So they've arrested 12,300. We think there's about 900,000 illegal workers in the country, so it's small beer, and only 1,700 have been returned. They'll probably be back.
Yeah, it's a really bad ratio. Also, we're going to be talking about the story about the MP, the Jewish MP.
That's shocking.
Which was shocking. He was supposed to be speaking at a school, then, of course, pro-Palestine campaigners then ensured that he didn't speak. Now, this is really bad. So we have Labour MP Joni Reid.
Oh, yeah, she's good.
So we'll be talking to her because she's the chair of the parliamentary...
She is.
Your party parliamentary committee for anti-Semitism. So
But the interesting thing here, it wasn't just protesters. It was the National Education Union.
Appalling.
The biggest education union that most teachers are a member of. What on earth rot has got to the core of that union?
I quite agree with you. Terrible.
Well, look forward to it, Tom and Anna. Thank you very much. That's coming up at midday, but up next...
Has homeschooling gone too far? Are too many students out of the classroom? Some of them very young, of course. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Hello, very good day to you. This is your GB News weather update coming to you from the Met Office. It's a bit wet out there at the moment, but also markedly milder than it was this time last week. However, we do have colder air to the northwest of the UK. That's going to make its way southeastwards as we go through the next 12 hours or so. Before that, there are two fronts lying across the country, bringing a fair amount of cloud and rain, particularly across much of England and Wales. A lot of that rain is clearing away towards the east-southeast, but it's going to take quite a while to clear away from some far southeastern parts. Elsewhere, brighter weather pushing its way in, but also a fair few showers across Scotland and Northern Ireland in particular. Like I said, colder air feeding its way in, so turning chillier towards the northwest despite the brighter skies, but staying milder towards the south and southeast. Here, as we go through into the evening, quite cloudy, some damp weather across parts of East Anglia and the far southeast, mostly dry but cloudy in the southwest. Elsewhere, across the rest of England and Wales and also Northern Ireland and Scotland, some decent clear skies as we go through the evening and the start of the night, but also a fair few showers across Scotland and Northern Ireland. And with the cold air across us, some of those showers will be falling as sleet or snow over modest high ground. Most places are going to have a dry night with lots of clear skies, the exception being in the far south-southeast, where it's going to stay quite cloudy but damp at times, and also more showers piling in across parts of Scotland. But with those clear skies in other areas, well, temperatures are going to drop, widely getting getting close to, if not below, freezing, so we can expect quite a widespread frost. There will also be some icy patches and some freezing fog patches as well first thing tomorrow morning. Those freezing fog patches could take a little while to clear as we go through the day, but actually otherwise a lot of bright weather for most places, except in the far south-southeast, staying quite cloudy, damp here, and across some western parts of Northern Ireland and Scotland we're going to see cloud and rain feeding in. Despite the bright skies, it is going to be a chilly day for most.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's political podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's political podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, D.C.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 23 minutes to 12. You're watching and listening to Britain's Newsroom on GB News with Andrew Pearce and Miriam Kate.
Fascinating story. Ofsted, that's the Education Schools Watchdog, has warned against a surge in homeschooling across the country, saying it threatens children's social skills because, of course, they're not mixing with other children.
Well, the head of the education regulator has said that too many children are being educated at home out of desperation from parents, and it's blaming the UK's regulations, which are some of the most relaxed in Europe.
Bearing in mind, you cannot have homeschooling in Germany.
Yes, we've got we might have the map available to view on screen, but if you look at the map of the rules in Europe, Britain is the only country where it's completely legal to homeschool your children with no obligation to inform the authorities. No. All the other countries at least require some sort of checking.
They just expect you to have the courtesy of writing to the head teacher to say you're taking the child out. Well, we're going to now have a debate about this. We're going to talk to the parent and co-owner of Educational Freedom, Michelle Zaha, and head teacher at LVS, Ascot, Christine Cunliffe. Michelle, let's talk to you first. You are an advocate of homeschooling. Why?
I'll correct you on home education, which is the term even the government uses on the guidance, and it's the preferred term for the UK home educators. I've been home educating my own child for over 6 years. He's happy, he's thriving. We support home educators up and down the country, and it's an individual education, how the child needs to learn. And it's not actually true that there's no regulation, because you do have to ensure that your child receives an education that is efficient, full-time and suitable to the child's individual age, ability, aptitude and any SEN or ALN. And if you don't, the local authority, under the current law, can issue a preliminary notice, and then they can escalate to an SI school attendance order. That is the law now. And the wordings, it's not even that they know that your education is unsuitable. The wording is, if it appears to the local authority your child might not be receiving a suitable education. So there is already something in place.
But what checks,
I took my child out of...
So just quickly, what checks, though, do they do which would give them that information? Do they knock on your door? Are there any obligations to report back on what your child is learning?
The EHE guidance says about an at least annual check-in. So local authorities contact you, depending where you live in the country, depends how they do the check. And how you respond. Again, families are different. My child doesn't let any stranger in the house, but he goes to 1,000 things outside the house. So he's seen by people all over the place. Every family is different. Some families do have home visits. Most families tend to prefer to engage in a written format with the local authority, because then you both know what's been said and done. But the local authority contacts you. They either contact you by a letter, by email, by telephone. Some local authorities doorstep, which has its whole own safeguarding issues there, because people have pretended to be people they're not and doorstep people. So there's a whole nother bit about doorstepping if they haven't written to you in advance. So they already check in. And if you don't respond, the law as it is, because there was some case law done on this, already states if you don't respond, the local authority, and this is in the EHE guidance as well, from 2019, we're not talking new guidance here, that they can presume that no education's happening and they can escalate. So there are already check-ins that are happening up and down the country. And if your child's been in school, unless the school or the local authority have broken the law, they know about you, because the pupil regulations mean they have to notify them.
OK, before we bring in Christine, just tell us very briefly, Michelle, why your son isn't at school, why you think you can do it better. Why did you take your son out of school?
Right, see, that's where you're getting wrong. It's nothing to do with why I can do it better. I actually quite enjoy family time. But my son, I wanted to home educate in the first place. My son wanted to try school. I let him try school. He loved reception. He asked to come out after that. So he came out before he was 6 years old. He knew about home education because I've got wider family and we've got friends who home educate in the local community. So he genuinely, as a young child, knew there were options, that there's not just one way to educate. And he wanted to come out. I was in a position to then provide the education. That's not a problem. It's not about being better than school. It's about having a smorgasbord of options of education that match the individual child and the parents' choices.
Let's bring in Christine, because I know you have a different view to this. Do you think home education should be banned full stop, or do you think it depends on the child and the parent?
I'm a firm believer in parental choice. That is one thing that I'm an advocate for. And I know for some children it works. It depends on individual circumstances. But I think what we're seeing is a possible abuse of this a little bit. We got too many children out of school. I mean, I think the last time I looked, it was well over 140,000 children. And I think we're seeing that since COVID. And what I would worry about is I know school can be really tough, especially where there are failures in schools or the children really just are not coping socially or whatever. But human connectedness is so important. Now, it's lovely to hear that your son is actually going out and he's doing lots of lovely activities and things like that, which is great, because we as humans need to connect with each other for emotional health, to learn things like empathy, resilience, because we learn from each other. All our experiences in life, whether good or bad, we learn from, and we learn how to cope in life. Now, that's great if you have a great balance and you can provide that, but I worry about the children where that's not happening, and it is isolation, and those children need to be mixing with people. The best problems across history and across the world, and what we need more for the future, are humans interacting together to solve problems for the future, and that's my concern.
But Christine, of course, there are some people who are doing this for nefarious reasons, whatever they may be. It's just easier to not have their child in school and not delivering an education. But I personally know families who are homeschooling, doing a brilliant job. They regularly meet with other families to deliver a broader curriculum. And do you think the problem here is that the government's in danger of using a sledgehammer to crack a nut? Is there a way of making sure that parents who are not educating their children properly are monitored and bringing their children back into school without infringing on the freedom of those parents who are going to do a very good job?
Yeah, without a doubt. Now, I know hybrid schools. I know schools where part of it's online, part of it's where the children are in school, for that socialisation is becoming popular. I'm all for the best outcome for the child, but I do believe that it has swung too far. And maybe the starting point is with the school, and you work with the school to see if homeschooling actually does work for that child, and that it's monitored and the visits are real and they're consistent. Because I can tell you now, I bet you they're not consistent across one local authority to the other. There has to be really, I think, really strong guidelines in there. There could be a curriculum that works alongside what schools are delivering as well, to make sure that we get the best for the child. Because I think, like with any system, there's always going to be abuse of that, and it's all right while it works, but when it doesn't work, it can go horribly wrong. And contact with children, with schools, sometimes can really safeguard them against things that are happening in life. Sometimes things are behind closed doors.
Fascinating stuff.
Really interesting.
We're going to have to leave it there, Michelle and Christine, but really appreciate you coming on, and I think there's lots more to this debate. I think there is. We'll probably get you back on again. Michelle Ziher and Christine Cunliffe, thank you so much for joining us. And do let us know what you think at home at gbnews.com/your say. Just a minute, we're getting into the pub. Great, but you never ask. First, and I'm buying as usual, but first, if you're in search of some holiday sun, here's the forecast.
Looking happy. Well, the forecast looks good. So you've sorted the travel insurance then?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello. If you're heading away for some winter sun, there's plenty of sunny weather across the Mediterranean, into Spain and Portugal, some wet weather through the rest of this week, but plenty of sunshine for parts of the Mediterranean, particularly into Greece. A risk of showers for Italy, parts of Croatia as well through this week, but it's Spain and Portugal that's seeing the particularly wet weather through the rest of this week. Slightly fresher feel for the Canary Islands on Wednesday, but it does look like temperatures come up more closer to those 19-20 degrees by the weekend.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, this is Jubes & Co with you.
Hello everyone, Patrick Christie is here. GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Access the stories that matter to you. Take the GB News family with you on any device. And as long as you have an internet connection, tune in to GB News anywhere on the planet or beyond. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions. But every Friday night at 9 p.m, you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/your say. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/your say, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't
No,
because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Okoye, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, though.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Welcome back to Britain's Newsroom. And the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, is set to announce a climb down on her decision to impose higher costs on Britain's struggling pubs. This, of course, is after receiving strong backlash from hard-hit businesses.
This is extraordinary, because there was a report around yesterday that Treasury sources said that they had no comprehension of the difficulties the pub trade was in. How could they not know?
And that they weren't aware of the forthcoming business rates reorganisation.
They are the Treasury.
Sounds extraordinary.
This is the Treasury, this is the Chancellor. The Tories now are saying the Chancellor's misled the public over a tax rate on pubs. So let's talk to Anna Riley, who is our North Yorkshire and Humber reporter. Anna.
Good morning, Andrew and Miriam. You join us here at the Rock Inn. It's in Bramley, which is part of the Chancellor Rachel Reeves's constituency in Leeds West and Pudsey. I'm joined by the landlady, Maureen. Maureen, you've actually banned Rachel Reeves from your pub. Why is that?
Well, all our local pubs have, because as far as we're concerned, they're trying to kill pubs off altogether. They don't want people in pubs talking about how bad things have got. So we've all decided we need to stick together.
And how bad have things got?
Oh, it's horrendous. The point is, the people at home haven't got the money to come out like they did before. I've got a lot of the same customers, but where they used to come out 3-4 nights a week, now they can only afford to come out once or twice a week. And people come out for company in a pub, and there just isn't a lot at the moment.
You're 73 years old. You've been a landlady here for 40 years this year. How does it make you feel to see how the industry has changed?
It's soul destroying. It really is. I mean, I've got lovely customers, and it's sad to see how it's gone. I don't understand this government. You're better off if you're just one of these ones who want to sit back and do nothing. You're better thought of. The ones who've been out and worked hard all their life, they're the ones who seem to be struggling now.
And just while we're speaking to you, would you be able to pull a pint for us at all?
Yeah.
Just while we're speaking there. And we've not heard yet as to what the government is going to announce is going to be a potential U-turn. But what would you like to see?
What would I'd like to see them helping the pubs more. That's what I'd like to see, and they're just not.
And you don't think extending hours isn't going to help?
Extending the hours isn't going to make any difference. The point is, we can't get the people in now, so why would they want to stay here for longer? They're not even in the first place.
Thank you, Maureen, and what a brilliant pint you've just pulled. Thank you for speaking to us here. So that's Maureen's take here at the Rock-In in Bramley on what's happening to pubs and this industry.
Well, on that, we're off to the pub. See you tomorrow.
Well, we're not. We're here. We've got to stay here, but we've got loads to talk about. Of course, the government are coming out with what some people would think is quite ridiculous little TikToks, where they've got just over 240 followers, just over 9,000 views, to show us just how good they are at tackling migration and show the rest of the world how scared they should be about coming to the UK.
And as the United States declares it should pull its citizens out of Iran, could things be about to kick off? All after the weather.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Boxed Boiler sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello, very good day to you. This is your GB News weather update coming to you from the Met Office. It's a bit wet out there at the moment, but also markedly milder than it was this time last week. However, we do have colder air to the northwest of the UK. That's going to make its way southeastwards as we go through the next 12 hours or so. Before that, there are two fronts lying across the country, bringing a fair amount of cloud and rain, particularly across much of England and Wales. A lot of that rain is clearing away towards the east-southeast, but it's going to take quite a while to clear away from some far southeastern parts. Elsewhere, brighter weather pushing its way in, but also a fair few showers across Scotland and Northern Ireland in particular. Like I said, colder air feeding its way in, so turning chillier towards the northwest despite the brighter skies, but staying milder towards the south and southeast. Here, as we go through into the evening, quite cloudy, some damp weather across parts of East Anglia and the far southeast, mostly dry but cloudy in the southwest. Elsewhere, across the rest of England and Wales, and also Northern Ireland and Scotland, some decent clear skies as we go through the evening and the start of the night, but also a fair few showers across Scotland and Northern Ireland. And with the cold air across us, some of those showers will be falling as sleet or snow over modest high ground. Most places are going to have a dry night with lots of clear skies, the exception being in the far south-southeast, where it's going to stay quite cloudy, a bit damp at times, and also more showers piling in across parts of Scotland. But with those clear skies in other areas, well, temperatures are going to drop, widely getting close to, if not below, freezing, so we can expect quite a widespread frost. There will also be some icy patches and some freezing fog patches as well first thing tomorrow morning. Those freezing fog patches could take a little while to clear as we go through the day, but actually otherwise a lot of bright weather for most places, except in the far south-southeast, staying quite cloudy, damp here, and across some western parts of Northern Ireland and Scotland we're going to see cloud and rain feeding in. Despite the bright skies, it is going to be a chilly day for most.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Boxed Boiler sponsors the weather on GB News.
There's just 3 weeks left to grab your chance to win our biggest cash prize to date. An incredible £85,000 in tax-free cash could be yours. Cash to make 2026 the year of yes. That's yes to holidays, yes to treats, yes to making all of those dreams come true this year. Just make sure you don't miss out. For another chance to win £85,000 cash, text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB18 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 30th of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.